Chosen one. God said one move was all heaven was waiting for, and you finally made it. Not everyone saw it. Not everyone understood it. Some people may not even know anything changed, but heaven knows. God knows. And something in the unseen realm shifted the moment you stopped negotiating with the old version of your life and made the decision your soul had been avoiding for far too long. This is not random. A higher hand has guided you into this moment because the confirmation you have been asking for is finally meeting the decision you already made. You may have thought the move was too small to matter. Maybe it was not loud. Maybe it did not come with applause. Maybe nobody called you brave. Maybe nobody knew how much it cost you to say no, to walk away, to stop begging for access, to release the outcome, to choose peace, to stop explaining yourself, to stop returning to the same place that kept breaking your spirit. But that was the move. That quiet decision was louder in heaven than 1,000 public victories on earth, because God was not waiting for you to become perfect. God was not waiting for you to have every answer. God was not waiting for your life to look polished, organized, impressive, or ready in the eyes of people. Heaven was waiting for one thing: agreement. Agreement with the version of you God had been calling forward. Agreement with the future you kept praying for. Agreement with the door you kept asking God to open, while still standing too close to the door He had already closed. And the moment you agreed, something moved. The waiting is over, not because everything outside you has changed yet, but because something inside you finally changed in a way heaven could recognize. This is why this message carries weight. You are not just hearing encouragement, you are receiving confirmation. There is a difference. Encouragement comforts you while you are still unsure. Confirmation meets you after you have already obeyed. Encouragement says, keep going. Confirmation says, heaven saw what you did. And chosen one, heaven saw it. Heaven saw the moment you chose not to react the way you used to react. Heaven saw the moment you refused to chase what kept running from you. Heaven saw the moment you stopped shrinking to keep someone comfortable. Heaven saw the moment you chose the narrow path, when the familiar path was still calling your name. And God is saying, that was it. That was the moment. That was the move. The move was not only about what you did, it was about what you broke agreement with. You broke agreement with fear. You broke agreement with delay. You broke agreement with the idea that you had to keep proving your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You broke agreement with the old room. You broke agreement with the old name. You broke agreement with the old version of yourself that kept accepting less because less felt familiar. And when that agreement broke, a new agreement was established. This is why things may feel strange right now. Not bad, strange. Not empty, different. Not lost, repositioned. Because when a chosen one crosses a threshold, the first feeling is not always celebration. Sometimes the first feeling is silence. Sometimes the first feeling is uncertainty. Sometimes you look around and think, why does nothing look different yet if I did the right thing? And that is where many people lose the reward of their obedience. They make the move, but when the outside world does not immediately applaud, they start questioning the move. They ask, did I hear God correctly? Did I leave too soon? Did I speak too late? Did I surrender the wrong thing? Did I choose faith? Or did I just make my life harder? But listen carefully. The first evidence of a divine shift is not always a changed circumstance. Sometimes the first evidence is a changed appetite. You no longer want what used to satisfy you. You no longer feel at home in what used to hold you. You no longer have the energy to perform for places that never truly received you. You no longer feel the same pull toward old chaos. You no longer fit inside the version of life that once felt normal. That is not confusion. That is transition. That is not punishment. That is proof that the move worked. God is separating your identity from the environment that trained you to survive, but never taught you how to receive. And this is why you need to stay with this message until the end. Not because of fear, and not because you are missing something outside of yourself, but because the next few minutes will help you understand what the move actually was, why heaven waited for it, what begins to shift after it, and how to avoid returning to the very pattern God just pulled you out of. You will also learn how to carry the new season without sabotaging it, how to recognize the doors that are opening quietly, and why your inner state must come into agreement with the blessing you have been asking for. Because the move opened the door, but stewardship keeps you inside the room, and there is a difference between entering a season and being able to remain in it. This is where many people misunderstand divine timing. They think divine timing means God is waiting for a date on a calendar. But often, divine timing is not about a date. It is about development. It is about capacity. It is about whether the person who receives the promise has become strong enough, clear enough, humble enough, and steady enough to not destroy what they once prayed for. Because sometimes God delays the opening of a door, not because He is withholding love, but because He is protecting the promise from the version of you that would have handed it to the wrong people, explained it to the wrong voices, celebrated it too early, or abandoned it the moment pressure came. You thought the wait was proof that heaven was silent, but the wait was not silence. The wait was surveillance. The wait was formation. The wait was heaven watching how you would behave when nobody clapped, when nobody understood, when the old temptation returned, when the familiar fear whispered, when the easy path opened again, when your feelings begged you to go backward. God was not measuring your perfection. He was watching your direction, and your direction finally changed. That is why the words are so clear now. You finally made it, but you need to understand what that means. It does not mean you have arrived at the final destination. It means you have crossed the internal line that kept blocking the external release. It means you are no longer standing in the same spiritual position. It means the old delay no longer has the same authority over your life. It means heaven is no longer dealing with you as someone who is undecided. There is a sacred power in becoming decided. A person who is undecided can be pulled by every voice. A person who is undecided can pray for destiny in the morning and negotiate with fear by evening. A person who is undecided can ask God for freedom while still protecting the chain. But a person who becomes decided becomes dangerous to every cycle that used to control them. Not dangerous in a loud way, dangerous in a holy way, dangerous because temptation cannot manipulate them the same way, dangerous because rejection cannot define them the same way, dangerous because delay cannot convince them that God has forgotten them, dangerous because they are no longer asking for permission from the people who benefited from their confusion. That is the kind of move heaven was waiting for. Not a dramatic move, a decided move. A move that says, I may not know every step, but I know I cannot go back. I may not see the full road, but I know the old place is too small for what God is building in me. I may still feel afraid, but fear is no longer my leader. I may still have questions, but questions are no longer chains. That is what happened in you. And even if you cannot explain it yet, you know something shifted. You know you do not think the same. You know you do not desire the same things with the same intensity. You know certain conversations feel heavier than they used to. You know certain doors no longer tempt you the way they once did. You know something in your spirit has stopped begging to be chosen by what God already rejected. That is not pride. That is awakening. That is not coldness. That is clarity. That is not you becoming distant for no reason. That is you becoming unavailable for what was never assigned to your next season. And this is where God begins to reveal something deeper. The move you made did not create your destiny. Your destiny was already written. The move allowed you to align with it. A door can be prepared before you arrive. A table can be set before you sit down. A promise can exist before you are ready to carry it. And this is what has been happening behind the scenes. There were things prepared for you that could not be released while you were still emotionally tied to what trained you to doubt your own worth. Because if God had released certain things too early, you might have dragged them back into old patterns. You might have taken a new blessing and placed it inside an old mindset. You might have received a new opportunity and filtered it through old fear. You might have been given a divine connection and treated it with the suspicion created by past betrayal. You might have stepped into a wider place, but still moved like someone trapped in a narrow room. So heaven waited, not to punish you, not to embarrass you, not to make you feel forgotten. Heaven waited for the move that proved you were no longer loyal to the identity that suffering tried to give you. That is why this moment matters so much. There is an old identity that wanted to follow you into the new season. The identity that always expects disappointment. The identity that apologizes for existing. The identity that over-explains every boundary. The identity that feels guilty for resting. The identity that believes love must be earned through exhaustion. The identity that thinks provision must come through struggle, pressure, panic, and constant survival. But God did not bring you here to dress an old identity in new blessings. He brought you here to make you new enough to carry what is next. This is where the deeper mystery begins. Because the one move was not only external, it was internal. Yes, maybe you walked away from something. Yes, maybe you made a decision. Yes, maybe you stopped responding. Yes, maybe you finally obeyed what God had been whispering for months. But the real move happened inside you when you stopped identifying with the person who had to keep losing themselves to feel safe. That internal move changed the atmosphere. And this is why some of you are experiencing a strange calm after a long season of pressure. Not because every problem vanished, not because every question has been answered, but because the war inside you is changing. The old survival frequency is losing its throne. For so long, your mind may have been trained to live in tension, always scanning for what could go wrong, always bracing for disappointment, always trying to control the next outcome before it could hurt you. And later in this message, I need to show you something important about that inner state. Because sometimes the reason people pray for abundance, clarity, and breakthrough, but keep feeling blocked, is not that God has refused them. It is that their nervous system, their thoughts, and their inner atmosphere are still tuned to survival, while their spirit is trying to receive. There is a hidden difference between living from pressure and living from divine flow. And once you understand that difference, you will understand why this move was so powerful. But before we go there, you need to see the first proof that heaven recognized what you did. The first proof is that the old path no longer feels innocent. What used to be easy now feels costly. What used to be normal now feels heavy. What used to be familiar now feels too small. What used to be acceptable now feels like betrayal. That is a sign of spiritual maturation. There was a time when you could ignore the warning in your spirit and still function. There was a time when you could say yes while your soul was saying no. There was a time when you could sit in the wrong room and convince yourself it was patience. There was a time when you could keep explaining your pain to people who had already decided not to hear you. But that time is closing, not because you are angry, because you are awake. And when a chosen one wakes up, the old system loses access. This is why some people may not understand you right now. They may think you changed suddenly. They may say you are acting different. They may feel confused because the same emotional buttons they used to press no longer create the same response. But you did not change suddenly. You changed silently. You changed in prayers nobody heard. You changed in nights nobody witnessed. You changed in battles nobody knew you were fighting. You changed every time you wanted to return but stayed still. You changed every time you wanted to prove yourself but chose peace. You changed every time you wanted to explain but let God defend what people refused to understand. That is why this move was powerful. It was not one isolated action. It was the visible fruit of an invisible formation. By the time you made the move, heaven had already seen the process that produced it. People saw the decision. God saw the preparation. People saw the boundary. God saw the breaking point you survived before you could set it. People saw the silence. God saw the wisdom it took not to speak from pain. People saw you walking away. God saw you finally choosing the future He had been protecting from your past. That is why you must not minimize what you did. The enemy of your next season will not always be a person. Sometimes it will be the voice inside you that says, "It was not that big. It was not that brave. It was not that important. Anyone could have done that." No, chosen one. Not everyone could have done what you did with the history you carried. Not everyone could have obeyed with the wounds you had. Not everyone could have released what you released after hoping for so long that it would finally become what you needed. Not everyone could have chosen the unseen promise over the visible comfort. So do not shrink the meaning of your obedience just because it was quiet. There are quiet moves that shake entire bloodlines. There are quiet moves that end patterns your family never had language for. There are quiet moves that tell heaven, "I am ready to be trusted with more." And this was one of them. God is not saying you made it because life will never test you again. He is saying you made it because the test no longer owns you. The same fear may speak, but it will not lead. The same memory may appear, but it will not rule. The same temptation may knock, but it will not have the same authority. The same people may expect the old response, but they will meet a new steadiness. This is the beginning of your evidence. Not the full harvest yet, the beginning. And the beginning must be protected. When a seed first breaks through the soil, it is alive, but it is still tender. When a door first opens, wisdom is still required. When a promise first begins to move, silence can be more powerful than announcement. So hear this clearly. Do not run back to old rooms to prove you have changed. Do not explain the move to people committed to misunderstanding the God behind it. Do not use the first signs of breakthrough to feed the same insecurity that God just healed. Do not ask the old season to celebrate the new version of you. That is not its assignment. Some places were only allowed to witness your preparation. They were never assigned to witness your arrival. And this is why the next part of this message matters. Because once heaven recognizes the move, life begins to reorganize around the new agreement. Relationships begin to shift. Purpose begins to sharpen. Provision begins to move differently. But before those changes become visible, God often deals with the final pieces of the old identity that are still trying to follow you. This is where you must be steady. This is where you must be discerning. This is where you must stop asking, "Why is everything changing?" and start asking, "What is God making room for?" Because the waiting is over, but the unfolding has just begun. And if this word is already touching something you have not been able to explain, place this simple sentence in the comments as a witness over your own life. I made the move, not for performance, not for attention, but as a quiet agreement with what heaven already knows. Because sometimes your mouth needs to agree with what your spirit has already chosen. And I hear the Father saying, "My child, I saw it. I saw the moment you chose me over fear. I saw the moment you released what you could not carry into promise. I saw the move that looked small to others but carried the weight of your becoming. Do not call it small when heaven called it enough. So breathe that into your spirit, not as pressure, as confirmation. You did not miss it. You did not ruin it. You did not wait for nothing. You did not obey for nothing. You did not lose what was meant to bless you. You released what could not enter with you, and now the threshold is under your feet. The next question is not whether heaven saw the move. Heaven saw it. The next question is whether you are ready to understand what changed when you made it. What changed when you made it is deeper than you think. The first thing that changed was your position, not your location, your position. You may still be in the same house. You may still be working the same job. You may still be facing some of the same responsibilities. You may still have the same bills, the same conversations, the same unanswered questions, and the same unfinished pieces around you. But in the realm of God, your position changed. Before the move, you were standing in between fear and faith, in between the old room and the new door, in between what God said and what your pain kept repeating. In between the version of you that knew there was more, and the version of you that kept trying to survive with less. But when you made that move, you stepped out of the middle. And this matters because the middle is where confusion has the most power. The middle is where delay feels endless. The middle is where a person can hear God clearly one moment, and then question everything the next. The middle is where the old season still has a voice, because you have not fully removed your agreement from it. But once you made the move, the old season lost its strongest weapon, access. It may still speak, but it no longer has the same access. It may still remind you, but it no longer has the same authority. It may still try to pull you, but it no longer has the same permission. That is why the shift can feel both freeing and uncomfortable. Freedom feels strange when bondage was familiar. Peace feels strange when pressure trained your nervous system. Clarity feels strange when confusion was the environment you learned to survive in. And this is why you must not misread the discomfort of transition as proof that you made the wrong move. Sometimes the discomfort is not a warning. Sometimes it is withdrawal. Your spirit is withdrawing from the old atmosphere. Your mind is withdrawing from the old agreement. Your identity is withdrawing from the old role. The role where you had to be available for everything. The role where you had to keep proving your heart. The role where you had to be the strong one, the quiet one, the understanding one, the one who carried weight nobody else wanted to name. But God did not bring you into this new season so you could keep playing the same role in a different room. He is changing your position because He is changing your assignment. And the second thing that changed when you made the move is that heaven could now begin to reorganize what was attached to you. This is the part many chosen ones do not expect. They think the moment they obey, everything should immediately become smooth. But often, after a true move of obedience, things begin to shake first. Not because you failed, because the old attachments are being disturbed. Some relationships begin to feel different. Some opportunities suddenly lose their shine. Some habits that once comforted you now feel empty. Some voices that once influenced you now sound smaller. Some places that once felt safe now feel too tight. And if you do not understand what is happening, you may start calling reorganization rejection. But it is not rejection. It is sorting. God is sorting what can go forward from what cannot. He is sorting what is assigned from what is familiar. He is sorting what is holy from what is habitual. He is sorting what strengthens your calling from what only feeds your old wounds. This is why you cannot panic when certain people no longer respond the way they used to. You cannot panic when old doors close with no explanation. You cannot panic when your desire changes. You cannot panic when the things you used to tolerate begin to disturb your peace. That disturbance is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is discernment waking up. There is a holy discomfort that comes when your future begins rejecting your past. There is a sacred unease that rises when you are standing too close to what God already told you to leave. There is a quiet resistance inside you when your spirit knows you are about to betray the move you just made. That resistance is not there to punish you. It is there to protect you, because the move opened something. But old patterns will try to follow. And if you carry old patterns through a new door, you may enter a new season and still experience an old cycle. This is why God is not just changing your circumstances. He is changing your capacity. A person can receive a blessing and not know how to hold it. A person can meet the right connection and still interpret it through the pain of the wrong ones. A person can step into provision and still live with the fear of losing everything. A person can walk into purpose and still apologize for being seen. So God is dealing with the inner place first. The place that expects disappointment. The place that feels guilty for being chosen. The place that believes every good thing must be followed by something painful. The place that keeps asking, what if this does not last? Chosen one, that part of you is being healed through this transition. Not overnight, not through pressure, not by pretending fear is not there, but by learning a new agreement. The new agreement says, I do not have to return to chaos to prove I am loyal. The new agreement says, I do not have to reject peace just because survival feels familiar. The new agreement says, I do not have to shrink the blessing to make other people comfortable. The new agreement says, I can be trusted with what God is releasing because I am no longer the same person who prayed for it from a place of panic. And this is where you need to understand something powerful. Heaven was not waiting for you to make a move because God needed information. God already knew your heart. God already knew your desire. God already knew the tears you cried, the prayers you whispered, the moments you almost gave up, and the strength it took to keep believing when nothing around you looked like movement. The move was not for God to discover who you were. The move was for your life to come into agreement with what God already knew. There are things God knows about you that your habits have not agreed with yet. There are things God wrote over you that your environment has not agreed with yet. There are things heaven has declared that your nervous system, your mind, your relationships, and your daily choices have not fully agreed with yet. And when you made that move, agreement began. That is why this season is so important. Because agreement is not a feeling. Agreement is a posture. Agreement is what you continue choosing when the emotional high fades. Agreement is what you keep protecting when old invitations return. Agreement is what you practice when nobody is watching. Agreement is how you prove that the move was not a moment of emotion, but the beginning of a new identity. And now God is going to test the agreement, not to break you, but to establish you. You may be tested by silence. Can you still trust when the door has opened in the spirit, but has not fully appeared in the natural? You may be tested by an old opportunity. Can you say no to what once made you feel needed, but no longer serves where you are going? You may be tested by an old person. Can you bless them without handing them access to the version of you they never honored? You may be tested by an old fear. Can you feel fear without letting it become your leader? You may be tested by impatience. Can you let God unfold what He has opened without trying to force the timing because your past taught you to panic? This is how the new season is protected. Not by doing more, by agreeing deeper. Not by striving harder, by becoming steadier. Not by proving yourself to every voice, by staying aligned with the voice that called you out. And now we have to talk about the hidden battle underneath all of this. Because many chosen ones understand spiritual obedience, but they do not understand the inner frequency they are living from. They pray with faith, but think from survival. They speak abundance, but expect loss. They ask God for open doors, but inside, they are bracing for rejection. They say they are ready, but their inner atmosphere is still trained to prepare for disappointment. And this is not because they are weak. It is because the mind can be conditioned by long seasons of stress. When you have lived too long in pressure, your inner world begins to treat pressure as normal. Stress starts feeling like responsibility. Overthinking starts feeling like wisdom. Fear starts feeling like discernment. Control starts feeling like preparation. Exhaustion starts feeling like discipline. But not all pressure is purpose. Not all urgency is God. Not all heaviness is responsibility. Sometimes the very state you have been calling preparation is actually survival dressed in spiritual language. And this matters because your inner state affects what you are able to receive. There is a reason peace is so powerful. Peace is not passivity. Peace is not laziness. Peace is not ignoring reality. Peace is the atmosphere where your spirit can hear clearly. When your inner world is locked in constant stress, it becomes harder to recognize divine direction. Everything feels like danger. Every delay feels like rejection. Every closed door feels like punishment. Every quiet moment feels like abandonment. But when you begin to shift out of survival and into a calmer, more receptive state, something changes. You stop reacting to everything as if it is a threat. You stop confusing urgency with guidance. You stop giving old fear the authority to interpret new doors. You begin to notice what was always there, but your stress would not let you receive. This is why the move was not only spiritual, it was also internal. Your obedience began to change your atmosphere. Your decision began to interrupt the survival pattern. Your surrender began to tell your mind, we are no longer living under the rule of panic. And this is where some of you need to hear this with great care. You are not blocked because you are unworthy. You are not delayed because God forgot your name. You are not struggling to receive because heaven is against you. But there may be parts of your inner world still tuned to the frequency of lack, pressure, and fear, while your spirit is trying to enter abundance, clarity, and divine flow. This is one of the reasons so many people can pray for a new life and still feel trapped in the old one. The prayer is reaching upward, but the inner state is still bracing downward. The soul says yes. The nervous system says danger. The spirit says open. The mind says protect. The promise says come forward. The old pattern says stay small. And until that inner conflict is addressed, a person can stand in front of an open door and still feel too afraid to enter. That is why God does not only give you a door, He gives you formation. He teaches your inner world how to live in the room you are about to enter. There is a kind of peace that is not natural to people who have survived too much. They have to learn it. There is a kind of receiving that feels unsafe to people who have always had to fight for everything. They have to practice it. There is a kind of abundance that can feel unfamiliar to a person who has been trained by scarcity. They have to be recalibrated. And I use that word carefully. Recalibrated. Because this is not about pretending everything is fine. This is about your inner system learning a different signal. For a long time, the world may have trained you into a state of constant mental noise. Always processing, always planning, always worrying, always checking, always trying to stay ahead of pain. That state can become like a spiritual static. You still believe, but you cannot hear clearly. You still pray, but you cannot rest deeply. You still hope, but you cannot fully receive. And when your mind stays in that high-pressure survival state, it is easy to mistake anxiety for instruction. But God often speaks in a deeper stillness, a quieter place, a clearer stream, a state where your inner world is not fighting every possibility before it arrives. This is why the shift from survival into peace is not small. It is sacred. It is also practical, because what you repeatedly listen to, focus on, speak over yourself, and allow into your atmosphere begins to train your inner state. This is why, later in your journey, you must become very intentional about the sounds you let shape you, the words you let settle in you, and the mental environment you return to every day. Some of you have been asking, why do I feel like I am right at the edge of breakthrough, but something inside me keeps pulling me back? The answer may not be that your blessing is far. The answer may be that your inner atmosphere is still learning how to receive what your spirit already knows is near. And that is why I want to mention something only for those who feel called to explore it. There is a tool called the wealth signal. It is a simple digital audio track designed to be listened to for 5 minutes a day with headphones. The idea behind it is not magic, and it is not a substitute for wisdom, obedience, or real action. It is built around the understanding that the mind can become locked in stress patterns, and that sound can help support a shift from the high-pressure beta state into a calmer alpha state, where clarity, receptivity, and flow become easier to access. I am sharing it here because it connects directly to what we are talking about. You made the move. Now your inner state must learn how to live in agreement with the move you made. The wealth signal is not here to make false promises. It will not do your obedience for you. It will not replace your discernment. It will not force a door that God has not opened. But for the chosen one, who has been living in pressure for too long, who keeps feeling pulled back into scarcity, tension, and mental noise, it may serve as a supportive tool for recalibration. Think of it like this. If your mind has been like a radio stuck between stations, full of static, fear, and old survival noise, then a tool like this is designed to help you return to a clearer signal. Not so you can chase blessings, so you can receive from a steadier place. Not so you can escape responsibility, so you can stop letting panic make decisions for you. Not so you can bypass the spiritual process, so your inner atmosphere can come into agreement with the season God has already begun. Dr. Stephen Newton, a neuroscience researcher connected with Stanford, is presented as the authority behind this method, and the track is designed to be simple. 5 minutes a day. Headphones. No complicated ritual, no long ceremony. Just a daily moment of recalibration. And if something in your spirit feels drawn to investigate it, the information will be in the pinned comment. Follow peace, not pressure. Explore it only if it resonates with where you are right now, because the bigger message remains this: God is not only changing what is around you, He is changing what is within you, and if your inner world does not learn peace, it may misread provision when it arrives. If your inner world does not learn steadiness, it may sabotage open doors because calm feels unfamiliar. If your inner world does not learn receiving, it may keep turning blessings into burdens. That is why the move you made must now become a lifestyle of agreement, a lifestyle of alignment, a lifestyle of choosing the new signal over the old static. And this is where you need to understand the third thing that changed when you made the move. Your timeline changed. Not because God is controlled by time, but because your agreement changed your access to the appointed time. There is ordinary time, and there is appointed time. Ordinary time is counted by clocks and calendars. Appointed time is recognized by heaven. Ordinary time says, "It has been too long." Appointed time says, "The person is ready." Ordinary time says, "Nothing has happened yet." Appointed time says, "The seed has broken underground." Ordinary time says, "You are behind." Appointed time says, "You are arriving exactly when formation has done its work." This is why you cannot compare your unfolding to someone else's timeline. They did not carry your assignment. They did not survive your wilderness. They did not fight your private battles. They did not have to break your patterns. They did not have to become you. You cannot measure your appointed time by another person's visible season. The move you made placed you on a timeline that may not make sense to people who only understand external progress. They may look at you and say, "Nothing has changed." But they do not see the decree. They do not see the agreement. They do not see the door moving in the unseen. They do not see the old access being revoked. They do not see the new connections being prepared. They do not see the protection around what has not yet been revealed. They do not see the invisible reorganization that begins before visible manifestation. But you must learn to see by faith before your circumstances catch up. Joseph had a dream before he had a palace. David had an anointing before he had a throne. Esther had positioning before she had public influence. And you had a move before you had evidence. This is the pattern. God often gives the inner confirmation before the outer display. Because if the outer display comes first, people may worship the result and never understand the formation. But when the confirmation comes first, you learn to honor the process. You learn to trust what God said before the crowd sees proof. You learn to become anchored before the applause arrives. And this is important because applause is not a foundation. Attention is not a foundation. Opportunity is not a foundation. Provision is not a foundation. The foundation is the identity God built in you while nobody was watching. That is what will hold what is coming, because what is coming will require a steadier version of you, not a louder version, not a more anxious version, not a version trying to impress everyone, a steadier version, a version that can receive without worshipping the gift, a version that can be seen without needing to perform, a version that can be blessed without becoming careless, a version that can be trusted with more because it no longer uses more to cover an inner emptiness. This is why the waiting season had to do such deep work. The waiting was not just about patience. It was about purification. It removed false motives. It exposed old attachments. It showed you which voices had too much power. It revealed where fear was still leading. It taught you the difference between desire and assignment. It taught you the difference between opportunity and alignment. It taught you the difference between being wanted and being called. Before, you may have accepted anything that looked like movement. Now, you are learning to discern what kind of movement it is. Not every open door is your door. Not every fast path is a divine path. Not every person who notices you is assigned to walk with you. Not every opportunity that flatters you is meant to form you. And because you made the move, your discernment is becoming sharper. This is why certain things will no longer fool you. Flattery will not fool you the same way. Urgency will not fool you the same way. Emotional pressure will not fool you the same way. Old guilt will not fool you the same way. You are beginning to recognize the difference between what calls to your wound and what calls to your purpose. That is a major sign you have crossed the threshold. The old you responded to wounds. The becoming you responds to wisdom. The old you chased closure. The becoming you protects peace. The old you confused access with love. The becoming you understands that sacred things require stewardship. The old you feared being misunderstood. The becoming you lets God hold the full story. This is not small. This is the fruit of the move. And now heaven can begin trusting you with instructions that would have overwhelmed the old version of you. That is the fourth thing that changed. Your instructions will become clearer, but they may also become quieter. This surprises many people. They expect the new season to come with constant signs, loud confirmations, and dramatic evidence every day. But mature guidance is often quieter than immature urgency. When God knows you are becoming steady, He does not always have to shout over chaos. He can whisper because you have learned to listen. He can nudge because you are no longer demanding thunder. He can close a door without explaining every detail because you have learned that protection does not always come with a full report. He can delay something without you accusing Him of abandonment. He can ask you to wait without you assuming you are forgotten. This is maturity, and maturity changes the way God leads you. In earlier seasons, He may have had to make the wrong thing fall apart loudly because you would not leave quietly. He may have had to let certain doors close hard because you kept trying to hold them open. He may have had to expose certain people because you kept giving them the benefit of a doubt they were using against you. He may have had to interrupt your plans because your plans were built around a version of you that no longer exists. But now, because you made the move, the guidance can become more refined. A small check in your spirit will matter. A quiet sense of peace will matter. A repeated inner knowing will matter. A loss of desire will matter. A sudden clarity will matter. You will not need everything to collapse before you obey. That is one of the greatest signs of growth. You no longer need destruction to get your attention. You can be guided by discernment. And this is the kind of chosen one heaven can trust with delicate assignments. Because there are doors that cannot open for a person who only obeys after everything breaks. There are connections that require sensitivity. There are opportunities that require timing. There are blessings that require silence. There are instructions that require you to move before people understand. And now God is teaching you to recognize the whisper. This is why the next phase will not only be about receiving, it will be about stewarding the whisper. Do not wait for everything to be dramatic before you take God seriously. Do not wait until your peace is completely gone before you admit something is not aligned. Do not wait until your body is exhausted, your mind is overwhelmed, and your spirit is dry before you step away from what drains you. Do not wait until the old cycle repeats 5 more times before you accept that God already showed you the pattern. The move you made proves you can obey sooner now. That is part of the promotion. A promoted chosen one does not need chaos to confirm clarity. A promoted chosen one does not need rejection to know where they are not assigned. A promoted chosen one does not need everyone to agree before they move with God. A promoted chosen one has learned that obedience often looks unreasonable before it looks fruitful. And chosen one, that is where you are. You are in the space between obedience and visible fruit. This space is holy, but it is also delicate, because the enemy will try to make you interpret the gap as failure. You made the move, but the harvest is not fully visible yet. You made the move, but some things still feel uncertain. You made the move, but some people still do not understand. You made the move, but the provision may still be forming. You made the move, but the door may still be opening slowly. And the temptation will be to say, maybe it did not work. But obedience is not a vending machine. You do not insert a move and immediately receive a result. Obedience is a seed, and seeds do not fail because they are hidden. Seeds do not fail because they are quiet. Seeds do not fail because the ground looks unchanged from above. The seed is doing its work where the eye cannot see. And this is what your move has done. It has entered the soil of your destiny. It has begun a process under the surface. Roots are forming, alignment is forming, protection is forming, connections are forming, capacity is forming, wisdom is forming. And soon, what was hidden will begin to show itself in ways you could not force. But you must not dig up the seed just because you are anxious for proof. Do not keep checking the soil. Do not keep reopening what God told you to release. Do not keep asking the old season to validate the new one. Do not keep testing your peace by returning to the place that stole it. Let the seed work. Let the move work. Let heaven respond in order, because heaven is not chaotic. God is not confused. The delay was not random. The move was not random. The timing is not random. And the next instruction will not be random. This is the beginning of divine order. And divine order often begins by making things feel temporarily out of order. Because what was built wrong has to be rearranged. What was attached wrong has to be removed. What was named wrong has to be renamed. What was used wrong has to be restored. What was hidden for protection has to be revealed at the right time. So if your life feels like pieces are moving, do not panic. The pieces are not falling apart. They are being placed. The relationships are not simply changing. They are being sorted. The silence is not empty. It is making room for instruction. The waiting is not continuing in the old way. It is turning into preparation for release. That is why the move mattered. It gave heaven permission to begin the visible reorganization. And this reorganization will touch 3 areas: your relationships, your purpose, and your provision. But they will not all shift at the same speed. Sometimes relationships shift first because God has to remove voices that would poison the next instruction. Sometimes purpose sharpens first because you need clarity before resources. Sometimes provision begins quietly because God wants to teach you trust before increase. And sometimes all 3 begin moving at once, but in small ways, so you do not become overwhelmed. This is why discernment is so important right now. Do not judge the season only by what is loud. Some of the most important movements will be quiet. A conversation that does not happen anymore. An opportunity that appears simple but carries unusual peace. A desire that fades without drama. A new idea that keeps returning gently. A person who speaks one sentence that confirms what God has already been showing you. A door that does not open with force, but with ease. Watch for peace. Watch for alignment. Watch for fruit. Watch for what does not require you to abandon yourself in order to enter. That is how you will recognize what belongs to this new season. Because the old season often demanded self-betrayal as the price of belonging, but what God is bringing next will not require you to lose yourself to receive it. It may stretch you. It may challenge you. It may require discipline. It may require courage. But it will not require you to betray the move God just helped you make. That is one of the clearest signs. If something requires you to become the old version of yourself again, it is not part of the new door. If something requires you to live in panic again, it is not carrying the peace of God. If something requires you to ignore the wisdom you suffered to gain, it is not aligned with your next season. If something requires you to shrink, apologize for your growth, or silence your calling so others can remain comfortable, it is not the blessing you think it is, because the blessing God releases will agree with the person He has been forming. It will not reward the mask He just removed. This is why you must stay sober in the season of release. Not suspicious, sober, not fearful, discerning, not closed, consecrated. Because when heaven begins to move, distractions often move too. Old voices may return. Old opportunities may reappear. Old desires may try to dress themselves in new language. Old fears may pretend to be wisdom. Old guilt may pretend to be love. But you are not the same. You have made the move, and now you must let the move become a gate. A gate that says, not everything can enter. A gate that says, not every voice gets access. A gate that says, not every opportunity deserves my yes. A gate that says, not every familiar thing is assigned to my future. A gate that says, I will not abandon my peace to prove my loyalty to chaos. This is the new stewardship. And if you want a simple inner action for this moment, do it only in your spirit. Picture the move you made as a golden gate behind you. Not in front of you, behind you. See it closing gently, not with fear, but with authority. On the other side of that gate is the old confusion, the old chasing, the old panic, the old self-betrayal, the old need to be understood by people who never wanted to understand. And on your side of the gate is quiet ground. There may not be a palace yet. There may not be a crowd yet. There may not be proof yet. But there is ground, holy ground, a place where you can stand without going back. Now say within yourself, without needing to move your mouth if you cannot, I do not cross backward to comfort what God delivered me from. Let that sentence become a gatekeeper. I do not cross backward to comfort what God delivered me from. That is not anger. That is stewardship. That is not bitterness. That is obedience with memory. That is what it means to protect the move. Because the move was not the end. It was the beginning of a new authority. And in the next part of this message, you need to understand why heaven waited until this exact point. Why your old delay could not follow you past the threshold, and why God is about to reveal the difference between being prepared for a blessing and being trusted with it. Because there is a difference between being prepared for a blessing and being trusted with it. Preparation means God has been shaping you. Trust means God can now place weight on what He shaped. Preparation means you have learned lessons. Trust means you can live those lessons when pressure returns. Preparation means you have survived the wilderness. Trust means the wilderness did not make you bitter, reckless, performative, or desperate for attention. Preparation means you know what God said. Trust means you will not betray what God said when the old option comes back with a familiar voice. That is why heaven waited. Not because your blessing was fragile, because the version of you who was going to carry it had to become steady enough to not hand it to the wrong thing. God was not trying to see whether you could be impressive. He was watching whether you could be entrusted. There are many people who want an open door, but they have not learned how to stop worshipping doors. There are many people who want provision, but they have not learned how to stop being ruled by panic. There are many people who want visibility, but they have not learned how to stay pure when attention comes. There are many people who want divine relationships, but they have not learned how to stop dragging old wounds into new connections. There are many people who want purpose, but they still want purpose to make them feel important instead of making them available. Chosen one, God was not just preparing the blessing for you, He was preparing you for the blessing. And this is why the move you made mattered so much. The move proved that you were no longer trying to receive the promise while protecting the pattern that would have destroyed it. You cannot carry a new mantle with an old agreement. You cannot enter a wide place while still clinging to the narrow identity that taught you to apologize for needing room. You cannot steward divine provision if every increase makes you panic, perform, compare, or attach your worth to what you can produce. You cannot steward divine connection if you keep punishing new people for the wounds old people created. You cannot steward purpose if you still believe your calling exists to prove your value to people who never saw you clearly. That is why God worked so deeply before he moved publicly. He was not trying to delay you. He was trying to deliver you from the version of you that would have mishandled what you prayed for. And this is the revelation you must receive. The delay did not end because time ran out. The delay ended because agreement changed. The delay ended because the old version of you lost the right to make decisions for the new version of you. The delay ended because heaven finally saw a move that proved your yes was no longer divided. For a long time, your mouth may have said yes while your fear said no. Your prayers may have said yes while your habits said wait. Your spirit may have said yes while your memories said protect yourself. Your calling may have said yes while your environment said stay small. Your future may have said yes while your old identity said, who do you think you are? That divided agreement created delay. Not because God was confused, because you were being formed into unity. A divided person can want freedom and keep choosing bondage. A divided person can want love and keep returning to what feels familiar, even if it hurts. A divided person can want peace and still answer every invitation into chaos. A divided person can want abundance and still think, speak, and move from scarcity. A divided person can want purpose and still hide whenever the assignment begins to require courage. But the move you made broke the division. That is why heaven responded. Not because the move was perfect, because it was whole. For the first time in a long time, something in you said, I am done going backward. And heaven recognized that. There is a kind of yes that changes the atmosphere. Not a yes spoken for performance. Not a yes spoken because you are emotional. Not a yes spoken because you want God to hurry. A yes spoken when going back is still possible, but no longer permitted by your spirit. That is the yes heaven was waiting for. A yes that costs comfort. A yes that closes an old door. A yes that releases the familiar. A yes that lets people misunderstand you without using their misunderstanding as permission to disobey. A yes that does not need everyone to clap before it becomes real. A yes that stands even when the evidence is not visible yet. That was your move. And because that was your move, the old delay cannot follow you the same way. It may try. It may whisper. It may recreate old feelings. It may bring old fears back to the surface. It may send reminders of who you used to be. It may try to make you feel late again, stuck again, behind again, forgotten again. But hear this clearly. The old delay belonged to the old agreement. When the agreement broke, the delay lost its legal ground. That does not mean everything appears instantly. It means the spiritual blockage that was attached to your old agreement no longer has the same authority. There is a difference between waiting because you are blocked and waiting because something is being arranged. There is a difference between delay that drains you and timing that develops you. There is a difference between being held back and being held until the right pieces are placed. Before, some of the waiting was connected to formation. Now, the waiting is connected to alignment. Before, the waiting was exposing what needed to die. Now, the waiting is arranging what needs to live. Before, the waiting was teaching you to let go. Now, the waiting is teaching you to receive without fear. Before, the waiting was breaking your attachment to the old room. Now, the waiting is preparing your steps inside the new one. So do not call this the same delay. It is not the same delay. The old delay had confusion in it. This one has order. The old delay made you question your worth. This one is teaching you stewardship. The old delay felt like a wall. This one is more like a doorway being unlocked from the other side. The old delay kept you circling. This one is positioning you. And if you listen closely, you can feel the difference. Not because everything is easy, but because something in you is no longer begging the past to make room for you. You are not asking the old place to bless your departure. You are not waiting for the old voices to approve your growth. You are not depending on the old cycle to confirm your freedom. That alone is evidence that the delay changed, because the person who needed permission to leave is not the same person who is standing here now. You have become someone else in the waiting, not a stranger. The truer version, the one beneath the fear, the one beneath the survival, the one beneath the apologies, the one beneath the constant need to explain, the one beneath the disappointment, the one beneath the false identity pain tried to give you. This is why God allowed the waiting to strip so much away, not because He wanted you empty, because He wanted you true. Some things had to fall off of you before the blessing came, because if they had stayed, you would have confused them with your identity. The need to be chosen by people who were never assigned to you had to fall off. The need to over-explain your obedience had to fall off. The need to earn love through exhaustion had to fall off. The need to treat anxiety as wisdom had to fall off. The need to keep one foot in the old room, just in case God did not come through, had to fall off. And that is why the move had so much power. It was not only a step forward, it was a declaration that those old attachments no longer had final authority. And now heaven can begin revealing what was hidden until you became whole enough to receive it. This is what happened with Joseph. Joseph had the dream early, but he did not receive the palace early. The dream came before the pit. The dream came before betrayal. The dream came before false accusation. The dream came before years of being unseen. And if Joseph had judged his destiny by the middle of the story, he could have believed God had spoken too soon, or that God had forgotten what He showed him. But God was not only preparing a palace, He was preparing a governor. There is a difference. A palace is a place. A governor is a person with capacity. A palace can be opened in a day. Capacity takes formation. And this is why your waiting could not be rushed. Because God was not only preparing a door, He was preparing the person who would not lose themselves when the door opened. Joseph needed wisdom before elevation. He needed restraint before authority. He needed forgiveness before influence. He needed interpretation before promotion. He needed to become the kind of person who could stand in power without using power to heal an old wound the wrong way. And chosen one, that is what God has been doing in you. He has been forming the part of you that will not use the blessing to prove your enemies wrong. He has been forming the part of you that will not turn visibility into revenge. He has been forming the part of you that will not let provision become pride. He has been forming the part of you that will not let new influence reopen old insecurity. He has been forming the part of you that can be trusted with more, because you no longer need more to feel real. That is the difference between being prepared and being trusted. Prepared means you survived the process. Trusted means the process survived inside you as wisdom. Prepared means you learned. Trusted means you became. Prepared means you can talk about faith. Trusted means you can choose faith when fear still has an argument. Prepared means you know the door is coming. Trusted means you will not become careless when the door opens. And now God is saying, you finally made the move that showed heaven the process has become part of you. Not just something you went through, something you became. This is why you cannot let the enemy make you feel small right now. Because when a chosen one crosses into trust, the attack often changes. Before, the attack may have been obvious pressure. Now, it may be subtle doubt. Before, it may have looked like closed doors. Now, it may look like second guessing. Before, it may have been people rejecting you. Now, it may be your own mind trying to convince you that you are not ready. Before, it may have been chaos around you. Now, it may be a quiet fear inside you asking, what if I cannot carry what I asked for? That fear does not mean you are unready. Sometimes that fear is proof that you understand the weight. People who are careless never ask whether they can steward the blessing. People who are arrogant never pause before responsibility. People who are immature only want the reward. But a formed person understands that the blessing has weight. So if a part of you is trembling, do not shame it. Bring it under truth. Tell that part of you, I am not carrying this alone. Tell that part of you, God did not form me this far to abandon me at the door. Tell that part of you, I do not have to become fearless to become faithful. Tell that part of you, fear can speak, but it cannot lead. That is the kind of inner authority you need now, because what comes next will require you to stop treating every emotion as an instruction. Your fear is not always a prophecy. Your uncertainty is not always a warning. Your discomfort is not always disobedience. Your quietness is not always emptiness. Your waiting is not always rejection. Your hiddenness is not always failure. Sometimes it is simply the sacred space between release and manifestation. And this space is where God trains your interpretation. Because if you interpret everything through pain, you will misread blessing. If you interpret silence through abandonment, you will miss protection. If you interpret delay through rejection, you will miss arrangement. If you interpret peace through boredom, you will run back to chaos. If you interpret correction through shame, you will resist formation. If you interpret weight through fear, you will run from responsibility. So God is healing the way you interpret your life. That is one of the greatest things that changed when you made the move. Your interpretation is being redeemed. You are learning to see the same situation through a different spirit. Before, a closed door meant punishment. Now, a closed door can mean protection. Before, silence meant abandonment. Now, silence can mean God is working beyond the reach of noise. Before, being hidden meant you were forgotten. Now, being hidden can mean you are being preserved. Before, losing people meant you were not enough. Now, losing people can mean your assignment has moved beyond their capacity to walk with you. Before, waiting meant nothing was happening. Now, waiting can mean roots are going deeper than eyes can see. This is not positive thinking. This is spiritual maturity. It is the ability to interpret life through the faithfulness of God instead of the wounds of your past. And when your interpretation changes, your reactions change. When your reactions change, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your patterns change. When your patterns change, your season changes. That is why the move was so powerful. It was the first visible sign of a deeper internal government. Something in you has a new ruler. Fear is no longer the ruler. Scarcity is no longer the ruler. Rejection is no longer the ruler. The need to be understood is no longer the ruler. The old name is no longer the ruler. God is establishing a new government in you, a government of peace, a government of wisdom, a government of discipline, a government of discernment, a government of trust. And when the inner government changes, the outer life eventually has to respond. This is why heaven could not release certain things while chaos still had a throne inside you. Not because God judged you, because God loved you too much to let a blessing become a battlefield. A blessing placed into an unhealed pattern can become pressure. A door open to an unsteady identity can become confusion. A relationship given to an unhealed heart can become fear. Provision given to a scarcity-bound mind can become obsession. Visibility given to an insecure soul can become performance. So God healed in the hidden place first. He dealt with the roots. He dealt with the agreements. He dealt with the hidden vows you may not have known you made. The vow that said, I will never trust again. The vow that said, I will never need anyone again. The vow that said, I will never let myself be seen again. The vow that said, I will always expect loss, so loss cannot surprise me. The vow that said, I must control everything or everything will fall apart. Some of those vows were born from pain. Some were born from disappointment. Some were born from survival. And for a while, they may have seemed to protect you. But what protected you in survival can imprison you in promise. That is why God had to bring you to the moment where you would make a move that broke agreement with those vows. You may not have used those words, but your spirit did. When you chose faith over fear, a vow broke. When you chose peace over chaos, a vow broke. When you chose obedience over approval, a vow broke. When you chose the future over the familiar, a vow broke. When you chose to stop returning to what harmed you, a vow broke. And heaven saw it. That is why I hear the Father saying, I was not waiting to shame you. I was waiting to free you. I was not counting your mistakes against you. I was watching for the moment you would stop calling bondage safety. I saw the move you made. I saw the fear you had to walk through. I saw what it cost you to choose me when the old way still offered comfort. And I am not calling that move small. I am calling it enough to begin the release. Receive that, not as hype, as truth. God was not waiting with crossed arms. He was waiting with a prepared door. He was waiting with a prepared table. He was waiting with prepared strength. He was waiting with prepared wisdom. He was waiting with prepared provision. He was waiting for the version of you who could stop dragging old agreements into new mercy. And now that the move has been made, the next stage is not about proving your worth. It is about stewarding your access. Access is sacred. Not everyone gets the same access to you in this season. Not every thought gets the same access to your mind. Not every fear gets the same access to your decisions. Not every memory gets the same access to your future. Not every invitation gets the same access to your yes. This is not about becoming hard. It is about becoming holy in your stewardship. You can love people without handing them the keys to what God is building. You can forgive people without letting them redesign your future. You can be kind without being available for manipulation. You can be generous without becoming a dumping place for every demand. You can be humble without shrinking your assignment. You can be peaceful without surrendering your discernment. This is the maturity heaven was waiting to see. Because the move you made was powerful, but the way you protect it will determine how deeply it can take root. There are people who make the right move and then reopen the wrong door 3 days later because loneliness speaks louder than wisdom. There are people who receive clarity and then trade it for approval because being misunderstood feels too heavy. There are people who step out by faith and then run back when the first sign of discomfort appears. There are people who say yes to God, but still let fear manage the calendar. That is not your portion anymore. You are learning the difference between mercy and access. You are learning the difference between compassion and assignment. You are learning the difference between patience and self-abandonment. You are learning the difference between waiting on God and waiting for people to become what God never assigned them to be. You are learning the difference between being loving and being led. This is the kind of wisdom that makes you trustworthy. And now you must understand why the old delay cannot follow this wisdom. Delay feeds on divided agreement. Delay feeds on self-betrayal. Delay feeds on fear disguised as discernment. Delay feeds on returning to cycles God already exposed. Delay feeds on refusing to become the person the promise requires. But when wisdom begins to govern you, delay loses food. When obedience becomes your pattern, delay loses authority. When peace becomes your filter, confusion loses access. When discernment becomes your gate, distraction loses power. When identity becomes rooted, rejection loses its throne. That does not mean there will never be waiting again. It means waiting will no longer mean what it used to mean. Waiting will no longer be the evidence that you are forgotten. Waiting will become the space where God arranges what your obedience has unlocked. Waiting will become the space where your roots deepen. Waiting will become the space where your discernment sharpens. Waiting will become the space where the blessing gains structure around you. Waiting will become the space where your spirit learns to receive without panic. That is a completely different kind of waiting. It is not the waiting of bondage. It is the waiting of order. It is not the waiting of shame. It is the waiting of stewardship. It is not the waiting of being overlooked. It is the waiting of being positioned. So, when you feel the gap between what God confirmed and what your eyes can see, do not collapse. Stand in the new interpretation. Say within your spirit, this is not the old delay. Say within your spirit, this is divine order taking shape. Say within your spirit, I am not circling anymore. Say within your spirit, I am being positioned. Say within your spirit, I do not need to go backward for proof that God is moving forward. Let that become an inner command. I do not need to go backward for proof that God is moving forward. Carry that sentence. Because the old season will try to offer you proof. It will say, come back and see if you still feel something. Come back and see if they changed. Come back and see if the old door still opens. Come back and see if the old version of you is still there. But you do not need to go backward for proof. The proof is not behind you. The proof is in the peace that did not exist before. The proof is in the clarity that survived the fear. The proof is in the fact that you can hear truth now without needing it to be wrapped in chaos. The proof is in the fact that what once controlled you now only tests you. There is a difference. What controls you owns your decision. What tests you reveals your growth. The same old thing may appear again, but if it no longer controls your yes, it has already lost more power than you realize. That is why the enemy sometimes repeats old tests. Not because you are going backward, but because the test is trying to see whether the old version of you is still available. And this time, the answer is no. No, I am not available for the old agreement. No, I am not available for panic as a lifestyle. No, I am not available for relationships that require me to abandon wisdom. No, I am not available for opportunities that feed my ego but drain my spirit. No, I am not available for guilt that punishes me for obeying God. No, I am not available for a small life just because a larger one requires courage. This no is holy, and your holy no is part of the move heaven was waiting for. Some of you thought the powerful move would be a yes, but for many of you, the move was a no. No to the cycle. No to the fear. No to the false responsibility. No to the old invitation. No to the version of you that kept confusing suffering with loyalty. And that no became a yes in heaven. A no to bondage is a yes to freedom. A no to confusion is a yes to peace. A no to self-betrayal is a yes to identity. A no to the wrong door is a yes to divine timing. A no to the old pattern is a yes to the promise. This is why God calls the move powerful, because it created room. You may not have gained something visible yet, but you created room for what is assigned. And room is sacred. Many people pray for more while refusing to make room. They want new peace, but keep old chaos. They want new provision, but keep old scarcity agreements. They want new relationships, but keep old emotional contracts. They want new purpose, but keep old excuses. They want new identity, but keep rehearsing old shame. But you made room. You released something. You refused something. You obeyed something. You chose something. You surrendered something. And now heaven can fill what obedience emptied. That is the mystery of this season. The empty space is not loss. It is room. The silence is not abandonment. It is room. The closed door is not rejection. It is room. The distance is not punishment. It is room. The unfamiliar calm is not absence. It is room. God is creating room for what could not enter while the old agreement was still occupying the space. This is why the next stage will require patience without panic. Because when room opens, the first temptation is to fill it too quickly. Do not rush to replace what God removed. Do not rush to name what God has not yet revealed. Do not rush to invite people into sacred space because quiet feels unfamiliar. Do not rush to spend emotional energy just because you finally have it. Do not rush to prove that the move was worth it. Let the room remain holy long enough for God to furnish it. There are spaces in your life that must stay empty for a moment because God is changing what belongs there. If you fill them too quickly, you may recreate the old season with new faces. So be patient with the room. Be patient with the quiet. Be patient with the rearranging. Be patient with the version of you who is learning not to panic when life is not loud. Because peace may feel empty at first, when chaos used to take up so much space. But peace is not empty. Peace is spacious. And spaciousness is where God begins to build. This is why the next revelation is so important. God is not just rewarding the move. He is building from it. The move is a foundation stone, not the whole house. A foundation stone is not glamorous, but everything depends on it. If the foundation is wrong, height becomes dangerous. If the foundation is weak, increase becomes pressure. If the foundation is cracked, visibility exposes what was never healed. But if the foundation is strong, God can build with weight. He can build purpose. He can build provision. He can build influence. He can build relationships. He can build assignments that last. That is why your hidden obedience mattered. It became foundation. The prayer nobody heard became foundation. The boundary nobody celebrated became foundation. The surrender nobody understood became foundation. The silence nobody respected became foundation. The tears you did not weaponize became foundation. The pain you refused to turn into bitterness became foundation. The waiting you survived without letting it destroy your heart became foundation. And now God can build on that. That is what it means to be trusted. Trusted does not mean you never feel weak. Trusted means you know where to bring your weakness. Trusted does not mean you never have questions. Trusted means your questions no longer become idols. Trusted does not mean you never feel fear. Trusted means fear no longer gets the final vote. Trusted does not mean you never need help. Trusted means you no longer confuse help with surrendering your authority to the wrong voices. Trusted does not mean you are finished. Trusted means you are ready for the next wait. And chosen one. This is where the message becomes very personal. The move you made has placed you under a new weight. Not a crushing weight, a commissioning weight. A weight of maturity, a weight of clarity, a weight of stewardship, a weight of becoming visible to the right doors, the right people, the right assignments, the right level of responsibility. And part of you may feel the seriousness of that. That is why you may not feel only excitement. You may feel quiet. You may feel reflective. You may feel careful. You may feel like something sacred is near, and you do not want to mishandle it. That is not a bad sign. That is reverence. And reverence is one of the marks of someone who can be trusted. A careless person rushes into holy things. A formed person approaches with wisdom. A careless person asks, "What can I get?" A formed person asks, "Who must I become to carry this well?" A careless person wants the crown without the character. A formed person understands that character is what keeps the crown from crushing them. That is why David had to be formed in fields before he stood in courts. He learned hidden faithfulness before public responsibility. He learned to fight lions and bears before he faced giants. He learned worship before warfare. He learned obscurity before authority. People saw a shepherd boy. God saw a king in formation. And some people may still see you through the last season. They may still call you by the old role. They may still remember the version of you who tolerated too much, explained too much, stayed too long, feared too deeply, and doubted too easily. But God sees what has been formed. God sees the king in the field. God sees the builder in the hidden place. God sees the voice before the microphone. God sees the leader before the platform. God sees the steward before the provision. God sees the healed version before the world sees evidence. That is why you cannot keep borrowing your identity from people who only knew your wilderness. They do not have the authority to name what God has formed in secret. They may know where you were. They do not know what heaven just approved. They may know what you survived. They do not know what obedience just unlocked. They may know your old reactions. They do not know your new government. So do not keep asking old witnesses to testify about a new version they have not met. God is your witness. Heaven is your witness. The move is your witness. The peace that followed is your witness. The clarity that remains is your witness. The old cycle losing power is your witness. The new desire for holiness, alignment, wisdom, and peace is your witness, and that witness is enough. Now, this is where many chosen ones must be careful, because after heaven confirms a move, there is often a temptation to announce too soon. You want people to understand. You want someone to validate the pain it took. You want someone to know that you were not wrong. You want someone to see that you are not the person they tried to define. But premature announcement can expose sacred formation to unsacred interpretation. Not everything God is doing in you needs immediate explanation. Some things need covering before they need conversation. Some things need roots before they need exposure. Some things need quiet before they can handle noise. Some things need to be lived before they are spoken. This does not mean hiding in fear. It means protecting in wisdom. When Mary received a promise that was bigger than her ability to explain, she did not have a full public relations plan. She carried what God placed in her. She moved with surrender. She let time reveal what words could not defend. There are things in your life right now that time will explain better than your mouth can. Let time testify. Let fruit testify. Let peace testify. Let consistency testify. Let the new version of you testify. You do not have to convince everyone that the move was God. Live the fruit of it. That is how the witness becomes undeniable. And this is the bridge into what comes next. Because if part of your old delay was connected to divided agreement, and if your move has now established a new agreement, then the next thing God must teach you is how to live as someone whose agreement has changed. That means your relationships must be examined. Your purpose must be clarified. Your provision must be received from peace, not panic. Your daily decisions must stop contradicting your spiritual yes. Your self-talk must stop resurrecting the identity God buried. Your imagination must stop rehearsing defeat as if fear is more trustworthy than God. Your attention must stop feeding what your obedience just starved. This is where the new season becomes practical, not theoretical, not emotional, only practical, because a move becomes a life when it is repeated in small choices. You made the move once. Now you will learn how to make the move again in conversation, again in thought, again in temptation, again in waiting, again in opportunity, again in silence, again when nobody is watching, again when the old door knocks, again when the new door opens, again when fear asks for control, again when God asks for trust. This is how the move becomes identity. And once the move becomes identity, heaven can build faster than you expected, not because you are forcing speed, but because resistance has been removed. Resistance inside you, resistance in your agreement, resistance in your patterns, resistance in your fear, resistance in your interpretation. And when the resistance is removed, what God has already prepared can begin to flow with less contradiction. This is why the old delay cannot follow. Because the old delay needed the old contradiction. It needed you saying yes and no at the same time. It needed you praying forward while emotionally living backward. It needed you asking for freedom while keeping the chain polished. It needed you asking for provision while rehearsing scarcity as your identity. It needed you asking for peace while giving chaos unlimited access. But that contradiction is being broken, and as it breaks, your life begins to come into order. Not perfect order, divine order. The kind of order where the wrong things lose their grip. The right things find their way. The hidden things begin to surface. The scattered pieces begin to gather. The wisdom you gained begins to matter. The pain you survived begins to serve purpose. The move you made begins to bear fruit. That is why you must not quit in the middle of reorganization. This is where everything can look unfinished. And it is unfinished. But unfinished does not mean failed. A house under construction does not look like a home yet. A field newly planted does not look like harvest yet. A promise in process does not look like testimony yet. A person in transition does not look fully settled yet. But God knows what He is building. He is not confused by the scaffolding. He is not embarrassed by the unfinished room. He is not intimidated by the space between foundation and completion. So do not despise the stage you are in. You are not behind. You are under construction. You are not forgotten. You are being formed into structure. You are not empty. You are being cleared for filling. You are not losing. You are being repositioned for a harvest that requires room. And in the next part, the message must become even more specific. Because now that you understand why heaven waited, and now that you understand why the old delay cannot follow the new agreement, you need to see how the reorganization will begin touching your relationships, your purpose, and your provision. You need to know what will leave, what will sharpen, what will open, and what you must not do when the first signs begin appearing. Because the move was powerful, heaven recognized it. The old agreement broke. The delay changed. The room has been made, and now, what has been waiting for the new version of you can finally begin moving toward your life. And when what has been waiting for the new version of you begins moving toward your life, it will not always arrive the way your old self expected. That is why you need wisdom now. Because when God begins to reorganize a chosen one's life, the first movement is not always increase. Sometimes the first movement is removal. Sometimes the first movement is quiet separation. Sometimes the first movement is a strange loss of desire for things that used to feel important. Sometimes the first movement is the closing of a door you secretly hoped would stay available. Sometimes the first movement is the revealing of motives you did not want to see. Sometimes the first movement is the sharpening of your own spirit, where you can no longer pretend something is aligned when you know it is draining you. Do not panic when the first evidence of your new season looks like a holy subtraction. God does not remove to make you empty. He removes to make you accurate. He removes to make you clean. He removes to make you free. He removes to make you available for what could not enter, while the wrong thing still had access. This is why the first area that begins to shift after your move is often your relationships. Not because people are bad, not because you are better than anyone, not because you are supposed to become cold, superior, suspicious, or unreachable, but because access must change when assignment changes. There are people who were connected to the version of you who was still undecided. There are people who benefited from your confusion. There are people who preferred your silence when your silence meant self-abandonment. There are people who loved your availability, but not your obedience. There are people who could handle your pain, but not your peace. There are people who could relate to your struggle, but not your growth. There are people who were comfortable walking with you when you were unsure of yourself, but they may not know what to do with the version of you who has finally made the move. This is not something you need to attack. It is something you need to discern. Because some people will leave because they were never assigned to the new room. Some people will stay, but the relationship will need a new boundary. Some people will return, but they will not return with a new heart. Some people will misunderstand you because they only knew how to connect with your wounds. Some people will be drawn to you because your new piece carries something their spirit recognizes. And some people will be sent by God at the exact moment you stop trying to force old connections to become divine support. That is the reorganization. It is not random. The wrong exits are not always loss. The right arrivals are not always dramatic. The new connections may come quietly. A conversation that feels clean. A person who does not demand performance. A voice that confirms without controlling. A connection that strengthens your peace instead of competing with it. A presence that does not require you to abandon your discernment in order to feel accepted. This is how you will know the difference. Old connections often needed access to your confusion. New aligned connections will respect your clarity. Old connections often trained you to explain yourself endlessly. New aligned connections will recognize truth without making you bleed to prove it. Old connections often made peace feel like distance. New aligned connections will understand that peace is part of your obedience. Old connections often made you feel guilty for growing. New aligned connections will help protect what God is building. But hear this carefully. Do not turn this into rejection of everyone. That would be another trap. Not everyone who disagrees with you is against you. Not everyone who does not understand your move is an enemy. Not everyone who needs time to adjust is toxic. Not every hard conversation is a sign to run. Maturity knows the difference between a relationship that needs grace and a relationship that requires self-betrayal. Maturity knows the difference between a person who is learning and a person who is using. Maturity knows the difference between discomfort and danger. Maturity knows the difference between correction and control. Maturity knows the difference between someone who challenges you in love and someone who resists your growth, because your growth inconveniences them. This is why discernment must become your language now. Not suspicion, discernment. Suspicion assumes danger everywhere. Discernment recognizes alignment. Suspicion is ruled by old wounds. Discernment is guided by wisdom. Suspicion pushes everyone away to avoid pain. Discernment gives the right access to the right people at the right time. You are not called to become closed. You are called to become governed. You are not called to become hard. You are called to become holy in your access. You are not called to punish people for your past. You are called to stop letting your past choose your future relationships. This is where your move becomes practical, because the old version of you may have measured love by how much you could endure. The new version of you must learn to measure alignment by fruit. Does this connection produce peace or constant confusion? Does it strengthen your calling or pull you back into performance? Does it honor your boundaries or punish you for having them? Does it make you more truthful or more afraid? Does it draw you closer to God or closer to the old version of yourself? Does it require wisdom or does it require self-betrayal? These questions matter now, because your relationships will either help steward the move or tempt you to reverse it. And you must understand this. The enemy does not always need to stop your blessing. Sometimes he only needs to reconnect you to a voice that can talk you out of your new identity. A voice that says, "You are doing too much." A voice that says, "You have changed." A voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" A voice that says, "You are selfish for needing peace." A voice that says, "Come back. It was not that serious." A voice that says, "Maybe God did not really say that." But the voice that tries to pull you backward is not always loud. Sometimes it sounds familiar. Sometimes it sounds emotional. Sometimes it sounds like guilt. Sometimes it sounds like responsibility. Sometimes it sounds like nostalgia. Sometimes it sounds like the old comfort that nearly cost you your future. This is why you must not confuse familiar with assigned. A familiar voice can still be wrong. A familiar place can still be too small. A familiar pattern can still be bondage. A familiar invitation can still be a test. And this time, you are not answering as the old you. You made the move. Now you must let that move speak through your boundaries. There is a boundary that says, "I can love you without returning to the old role." There is a boundary that says, "I can forgive you without giving you the same access." There is a boundary that says, "I can honor the history without repeating the pattern." There is a boundary that says, "I can care about you without abandoning what God is doing in me." There is a boundary that says, "I am not available for the confusion I was delivered from." This is not cruelty. This is stewardship. And the people assigned to your next season may not need you to explain this endlessly. They may recognize the change by the peace on you. They may understand that what God is building must be protected. They may not compete with your calling. They may not mock your obedience. They may not need to control your pace. They may walk with you without pulling you back into the very thing you were rescued from. That is one of the relationship signs of the new season. The right people will not require the death of your obedience as the price of connection. They may stretch you. They may challenge you. They may speak truth. They may see blind spots. But they will not demand that you betray the move heaven just recognized. And when you begin to see this, do not become bitter about who could not go forward. Let people be revealed without turning revelation into resentment. Let exits happen without building a monument to the pain. Let distance teach you without letting it harden you. Let God sort without needing to announce every separation. Because some exits are not punishments. They are permissions. Permissions to breathe. Permissions to grow. Permissions to stop managing emotional contracts God never signed. Permissions to stop carrying roles that were never your assignment. Permissions to let old rooms be old rooms. And the moment you stop gripping relationships that God is reorganizing, your purpose begins to sharpen. That is the second area, purpose. After the move, your purpose may not arrive as a full map. It may arrive as a clearer burden, a repeated thought, a holy concern, a quiet pull, a gift that starts asking for discipline, a desire that will not leave, a word that keeps returning, a door that opens with unusual peace, a small responsibility that carries unusual weight. Many chosen ones miss the beginning of purpose because they expect it to arrive fully grown. But purpose often begins as a seed. It begins as something small enough to ignore, but persistent enough to reveal that God is behind it. It begins as a burden for people who are where you used to be. It begins as a desire to build something you once needed. It begins as a sensitivity to pain you have survived. It begins as a gift that keeps showing up even when nobody pays attention. It begins as a problem you cannot stop noticing. It begins as a holy dissatisfaction with a life that looks safe but does not feel assigned. That dissatisfaction is not always ingratitude. Sometimes it is calling. There is a difference between being ungrateful and being awakened to a higher assignment. Ungratefulness complains because it refuses to see what God has already done. Calling stirs because it senses there is more God wants to do through you. Ungratefulness despises the present. Calling prepares within the present. Ungratefulness wants escape. Calling wants obedience. So do not shame the stirring in you. Do not call it restlessness too quickly. Do not call it pride because you feel drawn to something larger. Do not call it fantasy because it does not yet have full structure. Sometimes the first sign of purpose is that the old version of success no longer satisfies you. You may have wanted only comfort before. Now you want meaning. You may have wanted only approval before. Now you want alignment. You may have wanted only safety before. Now you want assignment. You may have wanted only increase before. Now you want impact. This is not random. Your purpose is being sharpened because the move removed a layer of confusion. Before, your energy may have been scattered across too many emotional battles. Before, your mind may have been occupied by people who were never assigned to carry your future. Before, your spirit may have been tired from explaining, chasing, proving, defending, and surviving. But now that access is changing. Energy returns. And when energy returns, purpose begins to speak more clearly. This is why you must be careful with your attention. Attention is one of the most sacred currencies of your new season. Where your attention goes, your agreement grows. If you keep feeding old fears with your attention, they will keep acting like they still have authority. If you keep feeding old drama with your attention, it will keep pulling energy from your assignment. If you keep feeding comparison with your attention, you will begin to despise your own timing. If you keep feeding regret with your attention, you will miss the instruction of today. But if you feed your calling with attention, it will begin to gain shape. If you feed your peace with attention, it will become a stronger atmosphere. If you feed your discipline with attention, it will become structure. If you feed your inner agreement with attention, the move will become a lifestyle. This is where the new purpose needs practical stewardship. Do not wait for a giant door to obey a small instruction. Do not wait for public recognition to develop a private gift. Do not wait for everything to make sense before you become faithful with what is already in your hands. Do not wait for the perfect moment to begin aligning your habits with your assignment. The move you made opened the threshold. Now small obedience builds the path. This is where God may ask you to become faithful in hidden ways again, but this hiddenness is different. The old hiddenness felt like being overlooked. This hiddenness will feel like being trained. The old hiddenness carried confusion. This hiddenness carries instruction. The old hiddenness made you question your worth. This hiddenness will develop your structure. The old hiddenness felt like delay. This hiddenness will feel like preparation with direction. You will begin to notice that certain disciplines matter more now. What you listen to matters. What you think about repeatedly matters. What you allow to influence your mood matters. What you say yes to matters. What you say no to matters. What you rehearse in your imagination matters. What you let shape your expectation matters. Because purpose does not only require passion, it requires an atmosphere. A purpose surrounded by panic becomes performance. A purpose surrounded by bitterness becomes control. A purpose surrounded by comparison becomes exhaustion. A purpose surrounded by peace becomes service. A purpose surrounded by wisdom becomes structure. A purpose surrounded by trust becomes fruit. This is why God is not just giving you an assignment. He is teaching you how to carry the atmosphere of someone who can fulfill it. That is also why the message about your inner state matters again here. If you are always in survival, your purpose can feel like pressure. If you are always bracing for loss, your purpose can feel like a risk. If your mind is always tuned to scarcity, provision can feel unsafe, even when it arrives. This is why your daily inner recalibration cannot be treated as optional in this season. You need moments where your mind is not ruled by static. You need moments where your spirit can hear beneath the noise. You need moments where your inner atmosphere returns to peace before you make decisions from pressure. This is why a tool like the wealth signal may be meaningful for some of you. Not because a sound replaces obedience. It does not. Not because a track replaces prayer. It does not. Not because any tool can force God's timing. It cannot. But because your inner state matters, and some of you have lived so long in beta pressure, constant stress, survival thinking, and scarcity expectation that peace feels unfamiliar. The wealth signal is designed as a simple 5-minute daily audio track with headphones to help support a shift toward a calmer alpha state. A state where your mind can become more receptive, clear, and less dominated by panic. If that resonates, you can look for it through the pinned information. But even if you do not explore it, do not miss the principle. You cannot carry a new season with an old inner atmosphere. You cannot steward purpose from constant panic. You cannot receive provision while worshipping fear. You cannot hear the whisper if every inner room is filled with old noise. God is making you steady because what He is bringing requires steadiness. And that brings us to the third area. Provision. This is the area where many people become most anxious, because when people hear that heaven is moving, they often immediately think about resources, money, doors, opportunities, offers, help, support, and the visible evidence that life is changing. And yes, provision matters. God cares about your needs. God knows what is unfinished. God knows what has felt heavy. God knows what you have been carrying. God knows what you could not fix by yourself. God knows the pressure that made you wonder how long you could keep going. But you must understand something. Divine provision does not always enter through the door. Your panic is watching. Sometimes provision enters through an instruction. Sometimes provision enters through a connection. Sometimes provision enters through a skill you must develop. Sometimes provision enters through a door you almost overlooked because it did not look impressive. Sometimes provision enters through an idea that needs discipline before it produces fruit. Sometimes provision enters through rest, because exhaustion has been making you miss what was already available. Sometimes provision enters through removal, because what was draining you had to stop consuming the strength needed for increase. So do not limit God to the form your fear prefers. Fear wants provision to arrive in a way that instantly removes all uncertainty. Faith learns to follow provision as it unfolds. Fear says, "Show me everything now, then I will trust." Faith says, give me the next instruction and I will obey. Fear says, if I do not understand the whole path, I am unsafe. Faith says, the shepherd does not need to show me the whole field to lead me to green pasture. This is why the provision coming after your move may be different from what you imagined. It may come with responsibility. It may come with structure. It may come with a new level of discipline. It may require you to stop wasting energy on what is no longer assigned. It may ask you to become a better steward of what you already have before more is released. It may come quietly before it comes visibly, but it will carry peace. Not always comfort, peace. There is a difference. Comfort tells you nothing will stretch you. Peace tells you God is with you even while you are being stretched. Comfort says, stay where nothing challenges you. Peace says, move where God is leading, even if your courage has to grow. Comfort protects the old self. Peace strengthens the becoming self. So when provision begins moving, do not reject it just because it stretches you. A new opportunity may stretch your confidence. A new connection may stretch your trust. A new assignment may stretch your discipline. A new level of responsibility may stretch your capacity. A new door may stretch your identity because it requires you to stop seeing yourself as someone who is always barely surviving. That is why the move had to come first. Because if provision had arrived while you were still loyal to survival, you may have treated the blessing like a threat. You may have thought, what if I lose it? What if I am not enough? What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if this changes me? What if this is too much? But the new version of you must learn a different language. Instead of saying, what if I lose it? You say, God will teach me to steward it. Instead of saying, what if I fail? You say, I can learn what I do not yet know. Instead of saying, what if I am not enough? You say, God does not call without forming capacity. Instead of saying, what if this is too much? You say, the weight is evidence that I am being invited to grow. Instead of saying, what if people judge me? You say, I will not let the fear of being seen make me disobedient. This is how provision is received from peace instead of panic. Panic grabs. Peace stewards. Panic overspends energy. Peace listens. Panic forces doors. Peace recognizes doors. Panic clings to every opportunity. Peace discerns assignment. Panic tries to prove worth. Peace moves from identity. You are being trained out of panic because the provision attached to your future cannot be governed by fear. This is why some financial doors, resource doors, and opportunity doors may have been delayed until now. Not because God wanted you to suffer, but because He wanted you to stop thinking like someone who must beg life for scraps. Provision is not only about receiving more, it is about becoming a person who can hold more without losing peace, integrity, humility, or purpose. There are people who receive more and become more afraid. There are people who receive more and become more restless. There are people who receive more and become more addicted to control. There are people who receive more and forget the God who met them when they had less. That is not your path. Your provision must remain connected to purpose. Your increase must remain connected to obedience. Your resources must remain connected to stewardship. Your doors must remain connected to discernment. Your blessing must remain connected to the one who blessed you. That is how you stay safe in increase. Not safe from every challenge. Safe from losing yourself. Because the purpose of provision is not only to make life easier. Sometimes it is to make obedience possible. Provision can create space. Provision can fund assignment. Provision can reduce the noise of survival, so your calling has room to breathe. Provision can place tools in your hands. Provision can allow you to help others without destroying yourself. Provision can free your time for what God has actually called you to build. Provision can become a river when it is connected to purpose instead of ego. That is why the old scarcity mindset has to break. Scarcity says, there will never be enough. Purpose says, what is in my hand can be blessed, multiplied, and directed. Scarcity says, I must hoard because I am alone. Purpose says, I can steward because I am led. Scarcity says, someone else's blessing means less for me. Purpose says, God's supply is not threatened by another person's season. Scarcity says, I am behind. Purpose says, I am being positioned. Scarcity says, I must panic to survive. Purpose says, I must align to receive. This is the inner shift heaven was waiting for. Because provision placed into scarcity can become bondage, but provision placed into purpose can become ministry, stability, freedom, and fruit. This is why the coming season must not be about chasing wealth as an idol. It must be about becoming aligned enough to steward what supports your calling. There is nothing holy about constant lack, but there is also nothing holy about worshipping increase. The holy path is stewardship, receiving with gratitude, building with wisdom, giving with discernment, resting without guilt, working without panic, planning without fear, trusting without passivity. That is the path, and this is where you must watch carefully for the first signs. The first sign of relationship reorganization may be a change in access. Someone who used to have emotional control over you no longer reaches the same place. A conversation ends without pulling you into days of confusion. A person's disappointment no longer becomes your command. You realize you can love someone and still not let them lead you. That is a sign. The first sign of purpose sharpening may be a repeated inner pull towards something meaningful. It may not be dramatic. It may be a simple sense that you are supposed to build, speak, create, serve, teach, lead, organize, heal, guide, protect, write, counsel, design, support, or begin. It may return again and again until you stop dismissing it. That is a sign. The first sign of provision moving may be a small door that carries unusual peace. Not necessarily the biggest door, not necessarily the loudest offer, not necessarily the thing that impresses people, but something that feels clean, something that asks for faith and wisdom, not panic and self-betrayal, something that creates alignment instead of draining your soul. That is a sign, but in all three areas, there is something you must not do. Do not force, do not chase, do not panic, do not announce too early, do not call everyone back into the room God just cleared. Do not fill the quiet with noise because silence feels unfamiliar. Do not use the first evidence of movement to prove something to people who did not believe you. Do not treat the blessing like a weapon. Do not make your increase about revenge. Do not make your peace about superiority. Do not make your calling about being seen by those who overlooked you. God did not bring you through all of this for your new season to become a reaction to the old one. Your new season is not revenge. It is alignment. It is not proof for your doubters. It is obedience to your Father. It is not about making people regret how they treated you. It is about becoming so whole that their treatment no longer defines your direction. This is a sacred difference. If your breakthrough is still controlled by the need to prove someone wrong, then they are still in the center. But God is bringing you into a season where He becomes the center again. Not the pain, not the betrayal, not the delay, not the people who left, not the people who doubted, not the people who misunderstood. God, His voice, His timing, His peace, His instruction, His purpose, His provision, His formation, His glory in your life. That is the center. And when God is the center, you do not need to perform the blessing. You can steward it. You do not need to weaponize the blessing. You can consecrate it. You do not need to prove the blessing. You can live it. That is what heaven is trusting you with now. A blessing that does not become a performance. A provision that does not become an idol. A purpose that does not become ego. A relationship that does not become dependency. A door that does not become your identity. A season that does not make you forget the one who carried you through the wilderness. This is why humility will be one of your greatest protections, not the false humility that calls yourself small when God calls you chosen. True humility, the humility that remembers source, the humility that receives without arrogance, the humility that learns without shame, the humility that grows without needing to look down on others, the humility that lets God promote without turning promotion into pride, the humility that can say, I was carried, I was formed, I was corrected, I was protected, I was not always strong, but God was faithful. I did not make it here by my own brilliance. I made it because grace kept finding me. This kind of humility will protect the new season, because pride opens doors to confusion. Pride makes you stop listening. Pride makes you treat warning as insult. Pride makes you confuse confidence with independence from God. Pride makes you think the blessing proves you no longer need the process. But humility keeps you close. Humility keeps you teachable. Humility keeps you grateful. Humility keeps you steady when increase comes. Humility keeps your hands open, and open hands can receive without clinging. That is the posture of the next season. Open hands, not desperate hands, not controlling hands, not fearful hands. Open hands, hands that can receive, hands that can release, hands that can build, hands that can bless, hands that can hold what God gives without turning it into a god. And if you need an inner picture right now, see this in your spirit. See your life as a room God has been clearing. In one corner, old relationships are being sorted, not with hatred, with truth. In another corner, purpose is being uncovered, not with pressure, with clarity. In another corner, provision is beginning to move, not with panic, with order. Now see yourself standing in the center of that room, not rushing to grab anything, not chasing what is leaving, not forcing what is not ready, not begging the old season to stay, just standing, steady, aware, available, and in your spirit, let this command rise. I will not rush what God is arranging. Let it echo inside. I will not rush what God is arranging. That sentence will protect you when impatience tries to act holy, because impatience often disguises itself as faith. It says, if you really believe, force it now. If you really believe, announce it now. If you really believe, make something happen now. If you really believe, prove it now. But faith is not always force. Sometimes faith is restraint. Sometimes faith is silence. Sometimes faith is preparation. Sometimes faith is waiting without returning. Sometimes faith is letting God arrange what you cannot manipulate into place. This is where the chosen one becomes dangerous in the most sacred way. Not because you are loud, because you are no longer easily moved by pressure. Pressure used to rush you. Now you can wait. Guilt used to command you. Now you can discern. Fear used to lead you. Now you can listen. Delay used to define you. Now you can interpret. Old voices used to name you. Now you can stand. That is what the move has produced. And this is why heaven is not only celebrating what you did. Heaven is watching what you do next. Not with condemnation, with holy attention. Because what comes next matters. After the move, there is stewardship. After the threshold, there is order. After the yes, there is consistency. After the breakthrough, there is building. After the confirmation, there is maturity. After the waiting is over, there is the responsibility of living as someone who no longer belongs to the old delay. This is the part that separates temporary excitement from lasting transformation. Many people love the announcement that the waiting is over, but not everyone wants the discipline of becoming the person who can live beyond the waiting. They want the door, but they do not want the new habits. They want the provision, but they do not want the stewardship. They want the relationship, but they do not want the healing. They want the purpose, but they do not want the structure. They want the crown, but they do not want the character. But you are not being called to temporary excitement. You are being called to transformation. You made the move. Now become the person who does not have to keep remaking it from panic, but lives from it as identity. Let the move enter your speech. Speak differently. Let the move enter your choices. Choose differently. Let the move enter your relationships. Allow access differently. Let the move enter your purpose. Build differently. Let the move enter your provision. Receive differently. Let the move enter your waiting. Wait differently. Let the move enter your imagination. See differently. Because once your imagination changes, your expectation changes. And once your expectation changes, you begin to notice doors your old fear would have ignored. Some of you have been imagining loss for so long that increase feels suspicious. You imagine disappointment before the opportunity even arrives. You imagine abandonment before the relationship even has a chance to grow. You imagine failure before the assignment even begins. You imagine judgment before you even step forward. That old imagination was trained by pain. But God is restoring your imagination. He is teaching you to imagine obedience without disaster, provision without panic, visibility without shame, love without self-betrayal, purpose without exhaustion, peace without boredom, increase without pride, a future without the old chain. This matters because your imagination often reveals what your heart expects. And God is healing your expectation, not into fantasy, into faith. Faith does not deny reality. Faith refuses to let old pain be the only author of what is possible. Faith says, I have seen hardship, but hardship is not my God. Faith says, I have known delay, but delay is not my destiny. Faith says, I have been misunderstood, but misunderstanding is not my name. Faith says, I have lost things, but loss is not the final language over my life. Faith says, I have been afraid, but fear is not my shepherd. Faith says, I have waited, but the waiting is not wasted. This is the expectation God is rebuilding in you. And as expectation changes, provision can approach without being rejected by fear. Purpose can approach without being crushed by insecurity. Relationships can approach without being filtered through every old wound. The future can approach without being forced to pay for what the past did. This is freedom, and this freedom must be guarded, because the first movements of the new season can be tender, not weak, tender, like new growth breaking through soil, like a door beginning to open, like a room being prepared, like a voice becoming clear after years of static. Do not expose tender growth to harsh hands. Do not hand new clarity to people who profit from confusion. Do not take your first piece back into the environment that trained you to panic. Do not keep asking people who benefit from your old identity whether your new identity is real. Let God confirm you. Let fruit confirm you. Let peace confirm you. Let consistency confirm you. Let the new doors confirm you. Let the old chains losing power confirm you. And when the reorganization begins, remember this: what leaves is not always rejection. What sharpens is not always pressure. What opens is not always loud. What stretches you is not always wrong. What feels unfamiliar is not always unsafe. What is quiet is not always empty. What takes time is not always delayed. What God is arranging does not need to impress the old season to be real. This is the wisdom you carry now. And chosen one, the next part is where everything must be sealed. Because you have heard that heaven saw the move. You have learned what changed when you made it. You have seen why heaven waited. You have understood why the old delay cannot follow the new agreement. You have seen how relationships, purpose, and provision begin to reorganize around the version of you who finally crossed the threshold. But now, you must receive the identity that matches the move. Because if you do not receive the identity, you may keep visiting the new season with an old name. And God did not bring you this far to let you wear the name pain gave you. The final part will speak over who you are now, how to carry the room that has opened, how to protect the peace that has returned, and how to seal this move as a new agreement before God. Because the waiting is over. You made the move. Heaven recognized it. Now it is time for your identity to catch up with what heaven already knows. So, Let your identity catch up with what heaven already knows, because this is where the deepest transformation begins. Not when the door opens, not when people finally see it, not when the provision arrives, not when the relationship shifts, not when the assignment becomes public. The deepest transformation begins when you stop calling yourself by the name your waiting season gave you. You are not abandoned. You are not delayed in the way you thought. You are not overlooked. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not too damaged. You are not the person who kept circling. You are not the person who kept returning. You are not the person who had to beg for clarity from places committed to confusion. You are not the person who had to shrink to be loved. You are not the person who had to carry everything alone just to prove you were strong. You are not the old name anymore. And if your identity does not change, your life can change around you, and you will still keep interpreting everything through the old wound. That is why God is not only giving you a new season, He is giving you a new name, not a name written on paper, a name established in the Spirit, a name that says chosen, a name that says trusted, a name that says formed, a name that says released, a name that says steady, a name that says no longer available for the old agreement, a name that says heaven recognized the move, a name that says the waiting is over because the person who was being formed has finally stepped forward. This is why the final battle may not be around you. It may be inside the way you see yourself, because the old identity will try to survive by using familiar language. It will say, "Do not get your hopes up." It will say, "You have been here before." It will say, "What if nothing changes?" It will say, "What if you made the wrong move?" It will say, "What if you cannot handle what comes next?" It will say, "What if people leave?" It will say, "What if the door opens and you fail?" But you must understand something. Those questions are not proof that you are going backward. They are proof that the old identity knows it is losing authority. The old identity is trying to speak before the new identity settles. Do not panic when old thoughts make noise. A dethroned thing often becomes loud before it becomes quiet. A cycle often argues hardest when it knows it no longer owns you. A fear often screams when it realizes you are not bowing anymore. So do not call the noise failure. Call it evidence. Evidence that something is leaving. Evidence that a false name is losing power. Evidence that the move was real enough to disturb the old agreement. You do not need to fight every old thought like it has authority. You need to answer from the new identity. When the old thought says, "You are still behind," answer, "I am being positioned." When the old thought says, "You missed it," answer, "Heaven saw the move." When the old thought says, "Nothing has changed," answer, "My agreement has changed." When the old thought says, "Go back," answer, "The gate behind me is closed." When the old thought says, "You are not ready," answer, "God does not call without forming capacity." When the old thought says, "You will lose it," answer, "I will be taught how to steward it." When the old thought says, "Who do you think you are?" answer, "I am the one God kept forming when nobody was watching." This is not arrogance. This is agreement. Arrogance tries to become something without God. Agreement receives what God has already spoken. Arrogance performs identity for attention. Agreement lives identity in obedience. Arrogance uses blessing to rise above people. Agreement uses blessing to serve from wholeness. Arrogance forgets the wilderness. Agreement honors what the wilderness formed. You are not becoming proud. You are becoming rooted. And rooted people do not need to announce themselves every hour. Rooted people do not panic when the wind moves. Rooted people do not beg shallow soil to understand deep roots. Rooted people know that what is hidden beneath them is part of what holds them. God has been rooting you. Every delay grew a root. Every prayer grew a root. Every lonely night grew a root. Every misunderstood act of obedience grew a root. Every boundary you were afraid to set grew a root. Every tear you did not turn into bitterness grew a root. Every time you chose peace when chaos offered you a familiar seat, a root went deeper. And now what is above ground can begin to grow because what is underground has been strengthened. Do not despise the hidden roots. They are why you can carry height. A tree without roots falls when elevation comes. A person without roots collapses under visibility. A calling without roots becomes performance. A provision without roots becomes pride. A relationship without roots becomes dependency. A door without roots becomes pressure. But you have roots now. You may not feel glamorous. You may not feel loud. You may not feel like the world understands. But you have roots. And heaven can build with a rooted person. That is why God said you finally made it. Not because you reached the final harvest. Because you reached the point where the harvest can begin without destroying you. Not because you have no more growth. Because you have enough root to enter the next growth. Not because you are fearless. Because fear is no longer your master. Not because you are perfect. Because your agreement is no longer divided. Not because every question disappeared. Because your questions no longer have permission to drag you back to bondage. That is maturity. That is trust. That is identity. And now you must receive the identity of the spiritual warrior. Not the warrior who is always fighting people. The warrior who holds ground. The warrior who refuses to collapse under pressure. The warrior who knows when silence is stronger than defense. The warrior who knows when peace is more powerful than reaction. The warrior who knows that not every battle deserves access to their energy. You are that kind of warrior. You survived what tried to make you bitter, and you still carry tenderness. You walked through confusion, and you still desire truth. You faced rejection, and you still believe in divine connection. You carried delay, and you still did not give up on purpose. You felt fear, and you still made the move. That is warfare, not the loud kind, the holy kind. You must also receive the identity of the cycle breaker, the one who ends what has repeated for too long, the one who says, "This pattern does not get another generation through me," the one who says, "This fear does not get to become my legacy," the one who says, "This scarcity does not get to define my decisions," the one who says, "This self-betrayal ends here," the one who says, "I may have inherited the pattern, but I will not hand it forward unchanged." That is why your move felt so heavy. It was not only about you. Some decisions carry generational weight. Some boundaries close doors that your family line never knew how to close. Some acts of obedience interrupt cycles that have been traveling longer than you have been alive. Some quiet moves tell heaven, "Let it end with me." You thought you were just choosing peace. You were breaking a cycle. You thought you were just walking away. You were ending a false agreement. You thought you were just saying no. You were protecting generations of yes. You thought you were just becoming unavailable. You were becoming free. That is why heaven recognized it. You must also receive the identity of the seer, the one who perceives what others miss, not because you are strange, because pain taught you to notice what words hide, because wilderness taught you to hear subtle shifts, because waiting taught you to sense timing, because God trained your discernment in places where people only saw delay. You can feel when something is off. You can sense when peace leaves. You can recognize when a door is shiny but not assigned. You can tell when a voice is flattering your wound instead of strengthening your purpose. You can perceive when God is asking for quiet obedience before public explanation. Do not apologize for discernment, but do not weaponize it either. Discernment is not for superiority. It is for stewardship. It is not given so you can judge everyone. It is given so you can walk wisely. It is given so you can protect what is holy. It is given so you can stop confusing every open door with your door. You must also receive the identity of the builder. Because after the move, God does not only want you to leave what was wrong, He wants you to build what is right. Leaving is powerful, but building is where transformation becomes legacy. You are being called to build something. maybe not in the way people expect, maybe not with a title, maybe not with a stage, maybe not with immediate applause, but something in you is meant to create structure where there was chaos. Something in you is meant to create shelter where there was confusion. Something in you is meant to create language for what others could not explain. Something in you is meant to create a path where you once saw no path. Something in you is meant to create a testimony that helps someone else believe they can make the move too. You are not just coming out, you are building forward. And you must also receive the identity of the pioneer, the one who goes first, the one who obeys before the crowd understands, the one who steps through the door while others are still debating whether the door is real, the one who leaves the old map because God is giving a new instruction, the one who does not need every person to agree before they move with heaven, the one who may feel alone for a moment, not because they are abandoned, but because pioneers often walk before a path is visible. This is why the move felt lonely. Pioneers do not always receive applause at the threshold. Sometimes they receive resistance. Sometimes they receive silence. Sometimes they receive misunderstanding. Sometimes they receive questions from people who are not assigned to cross where they are crossing. But pioneers do not turn back just because the crowd is still gathering courage. They walk with God, and eventually the path they walked becomes evidence for others. Chosen one, that is part of your calling. You are not only receiving a new season, you are becoming evidence. Evidence that waiting is not wasted. Evidence that obedience still matters. Evidence that quiet moves can shake heaven. Evidence that God can form a person in hidden places and then trust them with visible fruit. Evidence that the old name does not have to be the final name. Evidence that a person can make one move of agreement and watch life begin to reorganize around the will of God. But to carry this identity, you must release the need to keep visiting the old version of yourself. You cannot keep touching the wound to see if it still hurts. You cannot keep rehearsing the story as if pain is the only proof that it mattered. You cannot keep asking the old room whether it misses you. You cannot keep testing the old door to see if it still opens. You cannot keep using memory as a chain. Memory is meant to become wisdom, not a prison. Yes, remember what God brought you through. Yes, honor the lessons. Yes, carry compassion for the version of you who survived. But do not keep living there. The wilderness was a place of formation. It was never meant to become your address. The valley taught you. It was not meant to name you. The delay shaped you. It was not meant to own you. The pain revealed what needed healing. It was not meant to become your identity. The past is allowed to teach you. It is not allowed to lead you. That is the boundary now. The past can testify, but it cannot govern. The past can remind you of God's faithfulness, but it cannot define your future. The past can show you what you survived, but it cannot decide what you are worthy to receive. The past can explain how you became wise, but it cannot command you to stay afraid. This is how you protect the peace that has returned. You stop letting old pain interpret new mercy. You stop letting old rejection interpret new connection. You stop letting old scarcity interpret new provision. You stop letting old delay interpret new timing. You stop letting old fear interpret new responsibility. You stop letting old identity interpret the new name. And when you do that, your peace becomes stronger. Not because nothing challenges it, because you stop handing it away. Peace is not something you only feel when everything is easy. Peace is something you learn to steward when everything is changing. Peace is the guard at the gate. Peace tells you when something does not belong. Peace tells you when you are forcing. Peace tells you when you are rushing. Peace tells you when old panic is wearing religious clothing. Peace tells you when the door is clean. Peace tells you when to wait. Peace tells you when to move. Peace tells you when to stop explaining. Peace tells you when to speak. Peace is not weakness. Peace is authority under God. That is why the enemy tried so hard to keep you in mental noise, because a chosen one who cannot find peace can be manipulated by urgency. But a chosen one who has learned peace becomes difficult to control. They cannot be rushed by every voice. They cannot be moved by every accusation. They cannot be seduced by every shiny door. They cannot be dragged back by every emotional hook. They cannot be defined by every misunderstanding. They cannot be bought by attention. They cannot be broken by silence. They have learned to stand in the presence of God without needing the world to confirm every step. That is who you are becoming, and that is why your daily inner agreement matters. The move you made was powerful, but now you need a daily return to the signal of peace. Not just once, again and again. When the morning brings old worries, return to peace. When a message stirs old guilt, return to peace. When an opportunity awakens fear, return to peace. When the future feels too big, return to peace. When the old door tries to look innocent, return to peace. When your mind begins rehearsing scarcity again, return to peace. This is not passive. This is how you guard the room. Every day, your inner atmosphere is either agreeing with the new season or feeding the old one. That is why you must be intentional with what you hear, what you repeat, what you imagine, what you believe, and what you let live in your attention. For some, this is where a simple support like the wealth signal can become part of a daily recalibration, because 5 quiet minutes of intentional sound can remind the mind that it does not have to live in constant survival. But whether you use a tool or simply return to prayer, stillness, and aligned thought, the principle is the same. Do not let your inner world remain tuned to the old fear while your spirit is trying to walk into a new room. Let your inner signal agree with your spiritual move. Let your thoughts agree with your obedience. Let your expectation agree with your identity. Let your peace agree with your provision. Let your imagination agree with your calling. Let your daily atmosphere agree with what heaven recognized. You made the move. Now let every inner room learn the move. Let your mind learn it. Let your words learn it. Let your decisions learn it. Let your relationships learn it. Let your habits learn it. Let your waiting learn it. Let your receiving learn it. Let your silence learn it. Let your future learn it. This is how the move becomes permanent. Not because you never face temptation, but because you stop renegotiating what God already settled. That is the final seal. Stop renegotiating what God already settled. If God showed you the door was closed, stop negotiating with the handle. If God showed you the relationship needed a boundary, stop negotiating with guilt. If God showed you the old pattern was bondage, stop negotiating with nostalgia. If God showed you the assignment requires courage, stop negotiating with fear. If God showed you provision is connected to stewardship, stop negotiating with panic. If God showed you peace is part of the path, stop negotiating with chaos. If God showed you who you are, stop negotiating with old names. This does not mean you never ask questions. It means you stop using questions as a way to delay obedience. It does not mean you never feel emotion. It means you stop letting emotion sit on the throne. It does not mean you never remember the past. It means you stop letting memory become permission to disobey. It does not mean you become rigid. It means you become rooted enough to be flexible without being unstable, humble enough to learn without losing identity, open enough to receive without becoming naive, strong enough to love without surrendering discernment, gentle enough to heal without returning to bondage, wise enough to wait without calling it abandonment. This is the identity of the chosen one who has crossed the threshold. And now, before this message closes, I want you to do something entirely within your spirit. No movement is required. No outward sign is required. Wherever you are, simply let your inner attention enter the image of a threshold. See yourself standing at the entrance of a new room. Behind you is the old hallway, not dark in a dramatic way, just old. A hallway filled with old names, old fears, old agreements, old guilt, old scarcity, old confusion, old versions of yourself that once tried to protect you but can no longer lead you. In front of you is the room God has been preparing. It may not be fully furnished yet. You may not see every detail. You may not know where every door inside it leads. But the atmosphere is different. There is peace in the room. There is space in the room. There is instruction in the room. There is provision being arranged in the room. There are connections being prepared in the room. There is purpose waiting to take shape in the room. There is a table being set in the room. There is a name spoken over you in the room that pain did not give you and people cannot remove. Now see yourself placing the move you made at the threshold like a golden seal, not as a memory of fear, as a witness of obedience. That seal says, heaven saw it. That seal says, I crossed. That seal says, the old agreement is broken. That seal says, I do not belong to the old delay. That seal says, my yes is no longer divided. That seal says, I will not go backward to comfort what God delivered me from. And now, in your spirit, let this sentence rise. I agree with what heaven has recognized. Let it settle. I agree with what heaven has recognized. Again, without forcing, without striving, without trying to feel something dramatic, I agree with what heaven has recognized. That is your inner seal. When doubt speaks later, return to the seal. When old guilt speaks later, return to the seal. When impatience speaks later, return to the seal. When fear asks if the move mattered, return to the seal. When the old door tries to look open again, return to the seal. I agree with what heaven has recognized. This is not just a sentence. It is a spiritual posture. It says, I am no longer waiting for the old season to approve the new one. It says, I am no longer asking pain to name me. It says, I am no longer letting fear interpret God's timing. It says, I am no longer treating peace like emptiness. It says, I am no longer calling obedience lost just because it created room. It says, I am no longer negotiating with the identity God has already buried. Chosen one. This is the place where the blessing becomes safe to unfold. Because now you are not only asking for the door, you are agreeing to become the person who can live beyond the door. You are not only asking for provision, you are agreeing to steward it. You are not only asking for purpose, you are agreeing to be formed by it. You are not only asking for divine connection, you are agreeing to stop carrying old wounds into new rooms. You are not only asking for peace, you are agreeing to protect it. You are not only asking for a new season, you are agreeing to release the old identity that cannot enter with you. That is why God can trust you with the next step. And the next step may not be huge in the eyes of people. It may be a quiet instruction, a disciplined habit, a conversation you handle differently, a boundary you keep without anger, a door you do not force, a fear you do not obey, a provision you steward wisely, a calling you begin to build in hidden faithfulness, a relationship you stop trying to control, a moment of peace you choose not to sabotage. That is how the new season takes form. Small agreement, repeated agreement, protected agreement. The move was powerful because it began the agreement. Now the agreement must become a way of living. Every time you choose peace over panic, you are saying, I made the move. Every time you choose wisdom over old reaction, you are saying, I made the move. Every time you choose obedience over approval, you are saying, I made the move. Every time you choose stewardship over impulse, you are saying, I made the move. Every time you choose trust over control, you are saying, I made the move. Every time you choose the new name over the old wound, you are saying, I made the move. And if it feels right, place that sentence in the comments as a witness. I agree with what heaven has recognized. Not to perform, not to impress anyone, but to mark this moment, because sometimes a simple sentence becomes a memorial that says, this is where I stopped calling the move small. This is where I stopped calling myself behind. This is where I stopped negotiating with old fear. This is where I received the identity God had been forming in me. This is where I agreed. And now, let this be spoken over you. May the peace of God guard the move you made. May the wisdom of God order what comes next. May the hand of God close every door that would pull you back into confusion. May the mercy of God heal every place that still trembles at the thought of receiving. May the timing of God override the anxiety of your old calendar. May the provision of God come in ways that strengthen your purpose and do not steal your peace. May the relationships assigned to your future recognize the language of your new season. May every connection built on confusion lose its grip gently and completely. May every false name fall from your identity. May every old vow born from pain be broken by truth. May every hidden root of scarcity be replaced with trust. May every place where survival became normal be touched by divine calm. May your mind stop rehearsing loss as if loss is your destiny. May your spirit rise into agreement with what heaven has already spoken. May your home, your work, your decisions, your conversations, your imagination, your timing, your provision, and your path begin to reflect the new agreement. You are not who the delay said you were. You are not who rejection said you were. You are not who fear said you were. You are not who abandonment said you were. You are not who scarcity said you were. You are not who the old room said you were. You are who God kept forming. You are who heaven recognized. You are the one who made the move. You are the one who crossed. You are the one who did not let fear have the final word. You are the one who chose obedience when comfort still had a voice. You are the one who let go when holding on would have kept you divided. You are the one who allowed God to close what your flesh still wanted to keep open. You are the one who has been hidden, shaped, corrected, protected, humbled, strengthened, and prepared. And now you are the one who must walk forward. Not rushed, not frantic, not desperate, not trying to prove, not trying to punish, not trying to perform. Forward with peace, forward with wisdom, forward with clean hands, forward with a guarded heart, forward with a listening spirit, forward with a steady mind, forward with humility, forward with expectancy, forward with the quiet authority of someone who knows the old agreement is broken. And if no one else understands yet, heaven understands. If no one else saw the cost, God saw it. If no one else knows why the move mattered, heaven recorded it. If no one else celebrates the threshold, the Father is not confused about what just happened. And I hear the Father saying, "My child, you do not need to keep proving that you heard me. Walk with me now. You do not need to keep reopening what I closed to make sure it is closed. Trust me now. You do not need to keep shrinking to make others comfortable. Follow me now. You do not need to keep calling yourself by the name pain gave you. Receive what I call you now. I saw the move. I received the yes. I recognize the agreement. And what I have begun in you, I know how to complete. Let that settle over the final place in you that still wondered if you did enough. You did not have to do everything. You had to agree. You had to move. You had to stop giving the old version of you authority over the future God was calling you into. And you did. That is why the waiting is over. Not because every manifestation is complete, because the agreement that kept the old delay alive has been broken. Now the unfolding begins. And as it unfolds, remember this. Do not rush what God is arranging. Do not return to what God delivered you from. Do not shrink what heaven called enough. Do not call the quiet proof of nothing. Do not call the empty space loss. Do not call the new room unsafe just because it is unfamiliar. Do not let old fear interpret new mercy. Do not let old guilt punish new obedience. Do not let old voices rename new identity. Do not let old scarcity corrupt new provision. Do not let old delay define appointed timing. Stand in the seal. I agree with what heaven has recognized. Stand in the threshold. I made the move. Stand in the new name. I am not the old agreement. Stand in the peace. God is arranging what obedience unlocked. Stand in the purpose. What was hidden is beginning to take shape. Stand in the provision. I receive from peace, not panic. Stand in the identity. I am chosen, formed, trusted, and led. And from this moment forward, let your life answer differently. When fear knocks, answer differently. When the past calls, answer differently. When delay speaks, answer differently. When opportunity appears, answer differently. When peace arrives, receive differently. When God whispers, listen differently. When the next step comes, move differently. Because you are different now. Not because people said so. Not because circumstances proved it yet. Because heaven saw the move. And when heaven recognizes a move, earth eventually has to respond. It may begin quietly. Let it. It may begin slowly. Trust it. It may begin in hidden ways. Honor it. It may begin by clearing more room. Do not fear it. It may begin by strengthening your inner state before changing the outer scene. Receive it. It may begin with one instruction that seems small, just like the move seems small. Obey it, because small obedience in the hand of God can open massive rooms. A small yes can shift a bloodline. A small no can close a cycle. A small act of trust can break a long agreement with fear. A small moment of surrender can become the hinge of a new life. One move was all heaven was waiting for, and you made it. So walk forward now as the one who has crossed, not begging the old season to understand, not waiting for fear to approve, not asking delay to release what God has already unlocked. Walk forward knowing the waiting was not wasted. The preparation was not pointless. The pain did not get the final word. The silence was not empty. The hidden years were not forgotten. The move was not small. The door is not imaginary. The new name is not temporary. The agreement is not weak. The seal is not broken. The Father is not uncertain. The next season is not random. And you are not behind. You are stepping into appointed order. You are stepping into restored identity. You are stepping into sacred responsibility. You are stepping into a peace that does not need chaos to feel real. You are stepping into provision that serves purpose. You are stepping into relationships that honor alignment. You are stepping into a calling that will require courage, but will not require self-betrayal. You are stepping into a room heaven prepared while you were still being formed. So do not go back. Do not shrink back. Do not apologize for crossing. Do not keep explaining the move to people who were not there when God asked for it. Do not keep asking your fear if obedience was wise. Do not keep asking the old season if the new season is valid. The waiting is over. You made a move so powerful because it was not only a movement of your feet, it was a movement of your agreement. It was your spirit saying yes. It was your fear losing the throne. It was your future receiving permission. It was your identity standing up inside you. It was heaven hearing what your life finally agreed to say. And now, chosen one, go in peace. Go with wisdom. Go with discernment. Go with humility. Go with expectancy. Go with the quiet fire of someone who knows God saw it. The move has been made. The threshold has been crossed. The old agreement is broken. The new room is open. And heaven is no longer waiting